All right, good evening, folks. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so today is Thursday, May 14th, 2026. This is the regular meeting of the Haverford Township Planning Commission. The time is now 7:11. If I can have everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Josine, would you call roll, please?
All right, thank you. Ms. Stubbs.
Here.
Mr. Capuzzi.
Here.
Mr. Welsh.
Here.
Ms. DiTrolio.
Here.
Mr. Cortese.
Here.
Ms. Anopa.
Here.
And not present tonight is Mr. Terranova.
All right, thank you. The first order of business for tonight is we're going to be looking at the reorganized zoning ordinance. So we have with us the township's planning consultant, Adam Texa with IMEG, to give a presentation on where we are with the zoning ordinance reorganization. So Adam, if you would please. And as Adam is getting started, I will note, we reviewed this reorganized zoning ordinance at last month's meeting. The plan is that this gets reviewed at the Planning Commission's meeting this month, and then we will be taking public comment today, and then the Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to the commissioners on next steps moving forward. So Adam, please go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you so much. Is this picking me up? Is this working? Yeah, you guys can hear me? Okay, great. So thank you. So what I wanted to do is give a little bit of a recap for people who weren't here last time of the changes that were made in the document. Talk a little bit about the supporting documents and then go through some of those changes. So, as a reminder here, we're going through a sort of two-phase process. And the first phase of that, which we're in right now, is a reorganization of the document. The goal is to make it simpler, organize it so it's more intuitive, easier to use, and easier to administer. One of the things that has changed has been an update to the definitions. So we improved language and illustrations for clarity. We extracted standards. So one practice that you had in some of your definitions is you had standards in your definitions, which sort of buries them and makes them hard to find and then apply. We brought in new modern definitions for things like fitness studios, green roofs, garden centers, and then we made some legal alignments. And that's a really important conversation that we're going to have, I think, today is because you are going through an adoption of this, it would not be appropriate to continue using definitions, and I think one of them we'll talk about today, that could be, get you in legal trouble. So where we have found a need to update those definitions, we have. One of the big things that you will see in this ordinance is use tables. So we've talked about this a lot in the zoning 101 and in previous conversations that you had these sort of nested, I call them Russian dolls of standards where you referred to your R1 and your R2, and then you referred to your R2 and your R3, and then your R3 and your R4. So you had to kind of go back and back and back to figure out what was actually permitted. You now have clean, easy to use tables that are going to make it a lot easier to administer the ordinance. We've also put all of the bulk standards in a single table for each district. The advantage of this is, one, it's going to make it easier to administer, but two, it also makes it a lot easier to compare the difference between, for example, a C1, a C2, and a C3 zone. When we start going into the substantive updates, that's going to make our conversations a lot easier to have. We're going to be doing a lot less page flipping. It'll be easier for us to compare, those different zones and what you're actually permitting in those zones. The other thing that we've done is we've started to institute what are called sort of use categories. And so if you imagine you're trying to put together a table of all the different uses, and if you go into your current zoning ordinance, one of the things you'll find are this list of all of the things that you are permitted. So in this example, You've got office building or offices of an administrative, executive, or government agency, but not including shops or retail sale facilities. In another district, you have defined office and studios and given a very detailed list: optometrist, photographer, magistrate, insurance agent, musician, masseurs, artist, or similar practitioner, right? This is a very, what I would say, antiquated style of regulating uses where you try to enumerate every single use. Instead, the sort of modern way of handling this is to define generally offices, to make sure they include these things. But it allows your ordinance to evolve over time. So as, magistrates maybe become less in vogue and new office uses come in, you can still permit or not permit those uses accordingly. So in this example, all of these things are captured under office, which is a room, group of rooms, or building used for conducting the affairs of business, executive, professional, managerial, service, industry, or government. And this is one of the things that will, sort of happen is as you go through, it then becomes the responsibility of your zoning officer to review a use and see if it matches this definition. As part of our sort of rollout of this, we have really tried to be as clear as possible about what the changes are. So with the draft that was released, there were two documents that were put out there, and I recognize they're very long documents. Zoning documents are very long, but the goal here was to help people understand, like, if you were looking for something in the old ordinance, where would you find it in the new ordinance? So that was the change log. And then the other thing we did is we gave a list of all of the old definitions and all of the new definitions with the hope that it helps you easily compare where those changes occurred. So again, unfortunately, just the way that this works is it was really designed to allow users to find where the sort of current provisions went, not where the sort of not to go back retroactively. And then the other thing that we did is we did these change logs for uses. So this would be an example here where we listed all of the ways that it was explained in your current ordinance, and then how it was used or defined in the proposed ordinance, and then all of the places in which it was permitted or conditionally permitted or special exception. And that would give you an opportunity to go through and make sure that when we created those use categories, they matched up and we didn't miss anything. And in fact, I think in one of the comments we got, somebody rightly called out that there was something that was supposed to be a special exception was not, and we fixed that. So what I want to do today is just go through some of the questions and comments that we've gotten via email or via the survey that went out, and also to answer some of the board's questions that came up in the last meeting. So the first one is, I understand that some people didn't get the every-door direct mailer on the first pass. That is 100% on us. I apologize for that. We had some... Okay. I understand. I want to give everybody an opportunity to understand how this works and why somebody might have gotten missed, okay? We had a miscommunication with our vendor, all right? That was a number one issue. The second thing is we put out a second mailer to try to correct that. The way that we did this is we bought a mailing list from the vendor that was supposed to have every mailing address in the township. We also took for the second pass of the mailer, we also took the township's mailing list and we matched that against that. And then we also went through what's called an every door direct mailer route and looked at every address that was on it. It was a pretty extensive process and tried to get every address we could. I understand that some people didn't. I'm excited and happy that people did find out about this and were able to show up and listen to this presentation. So with the map changes that have been made here, one of the questions here was, have there been any map changes to the current ordinance? The answer is no. So one person asks, hey, I need to be able to compare this to what is happening or what was recommended in the comprehensive plan. And I think it's really important to recognize that we are not making any changes to the boundaries of any districts. We are not implementing any of the substantive changes that were recommended in the comprehensive plan. So another question that came up here was about family and the change in the definition of family. And so one thing that we did here, and this is going back to this conversation about bringing you up to sort of a legal standard. As you all can imagine, the definition of family is a highly litigated question. There's been federal case law on it, there's been state case law on it, and one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that you were in compliance with that. So one of the things that has come up, or a question has come up here, is have we changed the number of unrelated people who could live together? And so you can see the current ordinance and you can see the proposed ordinance, and you can see very clearly bold there, shall not include more than 3 unrelated people. That is in both ordinances. Okay, the difference here that we've rolled into this is one, added more clarity about the not more than 1 domestic employee, boarder, roomer, or lodger. Okay, so one of the things that we did when we tried to, when we looked at this was like, if you were to interpret this, and we asked the township solicitor how they would interpret this, what this would mean is that one of those 3 unrelated people could be a domestic employee, boarder, roomer, or lodger. Okay, so I want to read really quickly the solicitor's email when we asked him specifically about this. It is, quote, the definition provided for family is a standard, commonly used definition in zoning codes in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania courts have routinely upheld this definition as constitutional and have found that capping the definition at 3 unrelated persons is constitutional. If an accommodation is needed to permit more than 3 people, e.g. an additional caretaker for medical reasons, such a request can be made. In response to the comment below, I would recommend changing other legal relationship. So for those people who are reading that, right, legal relationship to otherwise by law. Okay, so I would recommend that. I think that's a good change. And I want to explain why this definition is more constitutionally defendable. First is the new language captures the reality that we have legal guardianships, civil unions, and other court-recognized relationships that are considered family. It prevents you from getting sued around that issue, all right? And then under, the Fair Housing Act and Pennsylvania law, you could be sued for restricting the number of foster children in a home, okay? And then when we as I said before, limiting to no more than 1 domestic employee, boarder, or lodger clarifies that number in the ordinance. So the second topic I want to talk about is home occupation. Okay, and this is an example of where you essentially had 2 definitions for the same thing. So in the current ordinance, you had a definition for home occupation was a use customarily carried on within a dwelling by the inhabitants thereof, which is incidental and subordinate to the use of the dwelling unit for living purposes and does not change the character thereof or involve the use of mechanical equipment other than that customarily used for the purely domestic or hobby purposes. Okay, the definition that we're providing and recommending is a simpler one. And the language there that's very relevant is customarily incidental and accessory use. All right, that's very common language in zoning, and it basically means that if you want to have a home occupation, it has to be secondary too. And what you had in your current ordinance right now were essentially 2 home occupation clauses. One was a professional office. Such office shall be located in the dwelling. So in both cases, it was located in the dwelling, in which the practitioner resides or within a building accessory thereto. Okay. The only difference between the requirement for a professional office and any other home occupation, so if it's a non-professional, so you run an Etsy store out of your home, for example, is that it shall not exceed 25% of the floor area of said dwelling unit versus 15. Okay, so we went with, when we did this, we combined them both into a single home occupation use. And the difference is we use the more permissive, the 25%, to cover all of them. Again, with the recognition that, quite frankly, most of you all, when you're doing a home occupation, right, we're all working from home post-COVID, are not going to have the township coming in and measuring the square footage of the office that you're using to do your work or to do your Etsy store. In terms of short-term rentals, and this is another thing about all the other uses that I think are going to come up in the conversation tonight. It's really important to understand this idea of exclusionary zoning and the fair share doctrine. Okay, so in Pennsylvania, there's substantial case law that basically you have to zone for all lawful land uses. All right, and I'm going to say it again. You have to zone for all lawful land uses. Doesn't matter if you don't like them. It doesn't matter if you don't think they will ever be built. You need to zone for them. And if you don't, you're putting yourself at risk, because what can happen is a property owner can come in, have a piece of property. Let's say they want to do something with that property that's not zoned for it, and you want to come in and they can sue you. And if they win, which they have a high likelihood of doing, then they get to do it exactly where they want to do it. All right, but if you zone for it and you put it in the right places, then you're essentially protected against that kind of lawsuit. We are not looking at this point in time as part of this reorganization to identify where those new land uses need to be. However, one of the things that we did do in this ordinance, and you'll see, is we added a lot of definitions for new uses that you are likely going to have to deal with in the reorganization, or excuse me, that you are going to have to deal with as part of the reorganization, or excuse me, as part of the substantial updates. So short-term rental is an example of that. And if you look in the use tables, one thing that you'll find is you won't see short-term rental listed anywhere as a permitted or a prohibited use. Okay, it's something we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to deal with data centers. We're going to have to deal with breweries. We're going to have to deal with a lot of things that aren't in your current ordinance right now. All right. So, when it comes to daycare, this is, again, you had two types of daycare in your zoning ordinance. So you had a daycare for not more than 2 children and a daycare for not more than 6 children. We just simplified that into a daycare in-home small and a daycare in-home large, and then regulated them accordingly. This was something that somebody pointed out earlier that I believe in the R5, you allow daycare in-home large as a special exception, and it wasn't listed as such, and we'd recommend that change as part of this update. So now I'm going to get into some of the comments that we had from you all as part of the last meeting. So this is a question on a cellar. One of the issues was raised was about whether or not a cellar could count towards a building height, and by the definition, and I think, Angelo, this was one of your comments. I think it was a good call. So one of the things we're going to recommend here is that there's an addition here that says a cellar shall not be counted as a story for the purposes of height, measurement, or determining square footage unless the vertical distance between the ceiling and the average level of the adjoining ground is more than 4 feet. Okay, so it matches the basement definition that we have in the other section.
Before you leave that,
Yeah.
When you look at the zoning code and do a word search for cellar,
Yeah.
the only place that word appears is in the definition section. So why do we need a definition for a term that's not used in the document?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would say that for now, you have a current definition of cellar, so we're modifying it. And we got into this.
The current definition says C basement,
Okay.
all right? So my thought is we don't need a definition for cellar if we're not using it in the text. And the definition of basement clearly describes whether or not it counts as a story or not.
Okay. Yeah, I could, if that's going to be the recommendation from the planning board, I'm certainly willing to entertain that. So the other question here was about building height clarification. And there was this question about, in the current ordinance right now, it's frequently listed that the building heights are either 35 feet maximum or 3 stories. And it's not clear which of them. So could you have a 4-story, 35-foot maximum building, for example? And we know that you all have traditionally interpreted that to be the lesser of the two. And what we would do is we encourage you to put this language in here into section 182.303, which just says explicitly where a maximum height standard is expressed as both a footage limit and a story limit, both limits shall apply concurrently. Okay. So another issue that came up here was about the definition of steep slopes. And this question about, should you also have this requirement about a continuous length greater than 30 feet? I did a little bit of research, looked into a couple of ordinances in adjacent municipalities. I'm comfortable taking that out. So that this steep slopes would apply essentially any time where the grade is between 15 and 25 or 25 or more. Okay.
All right, questions there?
Yeah.
Number one, the between 4 consecutive 2-foot contours represents a 6-foot elevation difference.
Yeah.
If you have a situation in your backyard, and I can show you pictures, where normally houses are built on a pad,
Yeah.
and then you slope down from the pad.
Yeah.
If you want to put addition out, say, the back of your house,
Yeah.
if you don't have a limit as far as how much steep slopes count, how much of a length steep slopes count, you might have a 10-foot section that encroaches,
Yeah.
and that requires a trip to the zoning board.
Yeah, I mean, that was why we had originally put this in here, and I'm responding to sort of comments from last time, the request to take it out.
Okay, well, I'm the one that asked to put it in, so
Okay.
I guess I'm disagreeing with the concept of taking it out. I'm trying to save the nuisance and the expense of a property owner having to go to the zoning board because they're disturbing a very limited amount of steep slope.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why it's in there. And it's not uncommon in my experience to see limits like that expressed in the zoning codes. For instance, I believe it's Newtown Township has a 50-foot.
A 50-foot, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that 50 feet is a big distance there, that like what you're really concerned about is like the site development, like the disturbance of steep slopes, right? That's really the key. So I think that this is one of those things that as you guys make your recommendations tonight, which I think is the outcome of this, you know, we'll take whatever recommendation you all think is appropriate. And happy to discuss it more. A couple of comments just about like the table of contents and cross-referencing. We will definitely do that in our next draft. There was a recommendation to define boarder, roomer, and lodger. I thought that was a good call. We basically defined, so a lodger is basically a roomer for all intents and purposes. So in this case, you know, a boarder is a person who resides in a dwelling unit for a time of 30 days or longer. This relates to that short-term rental conversation that we had earlier, occupied by another and pays compensation. Where a roomer is a person who resides in a dwelling unit for a time 30, occupied and pays compensation for lodging only. So the difference is basically, are you getting meals or not? There was a lot of conversation last time about site triangles. I think that this is something that we should defer to the substantial update because in some ways this is going to impact SALDO as well, the subdivision and land development ordinance. And I don't want to open up that can of worms along with this. I think you've got something right now that, you know, functionally is working, and we can update that as we go forward. The parking pad I thought was a very good call. So we had this conversation last time about, is it a driveway or is it a parking pad, sort of like just being able to pull up. And so we added this definition of parking pad, which is an improved off-street surface area, constructed asphalt, concrete, gravel, pervious pavement, or other approved material used for the parking and storage of one or more vehicles and located on a residential lot. So this is not a driveway, but it's a place to sort of pull up and park on your house, on your lot. I apologize. This has got the wrong header on this. This was on the open space definition. One question that was raised was previously the definition did not include, it sort of ended here at passive use. And there was a question of like, well, in the old definition, we included things like pools and tennis courts and similar recreational uses. I thought that was a good call, and so we're recommending putting that back into the definition. So this was an identification of drive-throughs. Somebody had noted that it was marked as special exception. It was not an intent to make that change. So we recommend that this section 182.604.C2 be marked as a permitted with an asterisk to indicate that it does have special or conditional use requirements and pointing to the supplemental sections accordingly. Another comment that we got was we had sort of combined accessory building and accessory structure, and there was a comment that really those two things aren't the same and we should be careful about combining those two together. I thought that was a good suggestion, and so we've sort of reverted back to accessory building and accessory structure here. We had a conversation last time about shared driveways and whether or not it should be limited to 3 individual lots. I don't recommend you make that change now. I think we can, one, I don't think it's appropriate to make that limitation in the definition. And 2, if you all want to start making restrictions on how many units can be served on a driveway, I think we need to look at what impact that would have on other development standards that we're not prepared to do today. Another comment was about satellite dishes. You sort of regulate in your current ordinance satellite dishes in a lot of different ways. One thing that we would recommend here is actually splitting satellite dishes and earth stations and television satellites into sort of 2 categories. And one would be those that occupy under 5 square feet of space, and one that's larger than that. And basically what that will do is distinguish between, you don't have them much anymore, but sort of residential, small scale satellite dishes and like a larger commercial version of that.
So someone who wants to put in a dish TV antenna wouldn't have to go to the zoning board and get a special exception.
Exactly. Whereas like if you wanted to put in, they don't really do them anymore, but sports bars used to have like the big satellites. That would be something that would be something else. Those larger ones would also include, I think, the more commercial applications of satellite dishes. I talked about previously the in-home daycare. By definition, so in-home daycare is an accessory use. We do think that it does need to be updated in 182.404 to list large in-home daycare as a special exception. So that would be in that R5 district. So it's listed as a special exception right now in R1. It is in your current ordinance in R5. We would recommend that it does as well. One of the questions that came up here was about enlargement and what defines enlargement. One thing that we heard from you all is that while the current definition works, it should also include like increases in density. And clearly this enlargement starts to play a role when especially a non-conforming use wants to make some sort of modification. So we think that makes sense. So we added that language, the increase in the density of residential uses. And so that would be a more inclusive definition of enlargement.
Well, why wouldn't you include like commercial and institutional uses?
I'm trying to think of.
Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah,
okay?
please.
St. Faith's Nursery School.
Yeah.
An application was in earlier this year where they expanded the number of children using that facility from, say, 30 to 60. Eventually, they said 100. And that building is a non-conforming building. It's on the non-conforming lot, so they expanded the use of the building, okay?
Were they coming in for an application for something?
They conditional use approval, yeah.
A conditional use approval for,
It's a complicated situation because the ground zone institutional. So there was a church there,
okay,
and the church had an accessory use for a daycare center.
okay,
The church left. They sold the building to a private individual
yeah,
who continued the daycare, which now became the principal use.
yeah,
So they operated for several years. Finally, they decided, or I don't know, township said, you have to come in and get a conditional use to legalize this.
legalize this,
Right.
like this.
So
So,
they expanded the use within the structure from 45 kids, they doubled it, basically.
so was their original permit for 45 children essentially? And
I
that
don't
was.
know what permit they would
Okay,
have got.
I hear what you're saying. So the word I would use is probably intensity of use there. And the only thing that I think you want to be a little bit careful of in doing that is the small increases in intensity. You've got a restaurant, you add 5 tables to your restaurant. Are you increasing the intensity necessarily of that use to a point where you now have to go in and you're in violation of your zoning permit? Or if you're a retailer and you add more shelving space, right? Like I hear what you're saying. I think you just want to be careful that you're not like inadvertently driving a whole bunch of things into essentially non-conforming or being considered an enlargement.
Again, in my experience, I've been involved in many projects where schools have built additions on their building,
Yeah,
increased their enrollment.
Yeah.
And because the schools were initially approved of either a conditional use or special exception,
yeah.
the township made them go back and amend those approvals to account for the additional enrollment.
I would say that, and I would say the additional floor area in existing building like covers like new buildings on there. So I hear what you're saying. If you all would like to make a recommendation around including intensity and density of uses, certainly something that I think the commissioners can entertain. That would just be my one caution, that you want to be careful. Whereas residential density is a little bit easier to measure and has got a little bit clearer connection to sort of core issues.
Adam, if I can just
Yeah.
clarify for the audience, so when we say increasing density of residential uses, we mean if somebody wants to like take a house and turn it into a duplex.
Yes, exactly. That would be considered an enlargement. And as a result, by being an enlargement, that would trigger a zoning review. Exactly, yeah. In terms of one of the things that somebody rightly called out was in your R7, R8, and R9 and some other places, you refer to gross site area and net site area. And we didn't define that, and we thought that was a really good catch, and so we're going to add those. We would recommend adding those definitions in there. That net site area mirrors the definition for lot area with the restrictions of floodplains, wetlands, very steep slopes, 50% of steep slopes, and other constrained and encumbered lands as specified in this ordinance.
Again,
Yeah.
the lot area does not include that last sentence. And other constrained or encumbered lands as specified in this ordinance, what would they be? I don't know what they would be. If I don't know what they be, I don't know if the township would know what they might be. And
Yeah,
how are you going to find those in the code if we don't know what they are?
So it isn't all sort of encompassing any other constraints or encumbrances that you've placed on a land going forward, right? So an example of that might be like you require, because this is net site area, not net lot area. So for a site, like an encumbrance on that land might be that you require a set aside as part of the approval, or that you require dedication of public streets as part of the approval. Right? So you've got your gross and then you've got your net. And what you're trying to do, so that's all of the rights of ways dedicated to public or private use, floodplains. It's basically everything that you would take off to get to your developable land.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yep,
don't mean
sorry.
to interrupt. I just have a question while we're on it.
Yeah.
So you said net site area and lot area are similar definitions.
Yeah.
Can you explain how they're used differently in the code? Like where does lot area get triggered and where does net site area get triggered?
Yeah,
They sound the same.
they do sound the same. Yeah, so it has to do with that R7, R8, R9, and basically those are like large lot developments where you're doing like essentially subdivision is where things are. So that's where you're thinking about like the site as a whole, and then likely putting in streets and putting in, public facilities and things like that. Whereas your lot area is typically just your parcel, right? Or your 3 or 4 parcels that are part of a development application.
Okay.
So they overlap, but they're just applied in different areas. And I'd have to go back and look, but I believe the gross site and the net site area, I don't want to speak out of turn. I can go look at how they're actually used in the R7, R8, and R9.
Okay. I believe it has to do with like the impervious coverage
Yeah.
calculations. So,
Yeah.
So those definitions do make sense to me. Thank you for that
Okay.
clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
From a practical standpoint, I don't think there's any ground that are zoned R7, R8, and R9 that are undeveloped in the township.
No, but we need to define these things because the standards are there, and yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the other thing was also called out here is that in the C5 district, you don't define planned community shopping centers. So we think that that is a good definition to add here. At the same time, we felt like it's probably worth, if you're going to define planned community shopping centers, to define a retail center. They're basically, the difference here is of scale. So in a planned community shopping center, it's a unified commercial development consisting of multiple commercial uses, situated on a single lot or tract of land. So going back to the conversation here, the difference between that and a retail center is they are all in basically a continuous or connected buildings. So a retail center, somebody might call like a strip mall, would be sort of like what that would be, where a planned community shopping center would be like a super center where you maybe have like a grocery store and then a couple adjacent like retailers, maybe an office, and then like this sort of dates me, like an Applebee's or something that is on the sort of like an outlot for that. And then the last comment here was just that we had taken out woodlands, but that woodlands was still in the ordinance. We thought this was a very good call, and so we're recommending restoring that definition.
Is there a way of quantifying what the word mostly means?
And there's
And could we put in a percentage like 75%, 80%?
I could look. I think once you get into like defining that, it's going to get really sticky. You're going to be held to that number.
Well, mostly is an open end as far as I'm concerned. That's, what I
It
think
is.
is mostly and what someone else might think is mostly are two different numbers.
It is. Let me say this. I'd have to do some research on that. I think it's a good call. One thing to think about is to leave it in here now and to think about it as part of the substantive updates in the second phase of this. So with that, those are sort of my, reactions to the comments that we've got. I think a number of other, I want to just acknowledge we got another number of emails that, really talked about the process here and, questions about community engagement. I'm happy to answer those for the board as well, but I wanted to focus mostly on the substantive comments and questions that came in.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
All right, so for organizing the rest of our discussion, so we'd like to then have Planning Commission ask any comments, questions of Adam, and then per our agenda, our public comment isn't actually until after we review the minutes, but I would like to move that we move the public comment up before meeting minutes. Jamie, if that's all right? Do you want us to take a formal vote on that to amend the agenda?
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you.
I apologize. Before we go on, can I just make one say? The other thing that I apologize, I did not include it in this definition, but I can bring it up. It's on my computer. We did look at building line, and we did look at the comments that you had suggested, and I do have some recommendations on that. If you want to do a few things, I can grab it off my computer and pull it up so that we can look at it really quickly.
Okay,
Okay? Give me 1 second.
sure, we'll do that. All right, so while he's doing that, we'll just go down the line. Does Planning Commission have comments or questions? Or we can wait until Adam's back to the podium. We wait. Okay, well, while we're waiting, formulate any comments or questions.
So this was the conversation that we had last time, and I know this is going to be a little, apologies, hard to hear, but it actually helps to start from the back. And so last time we got into this conversation about essentially lot width and building line, and there's this question about lot width on basically lots that start to taper back. Or that are sort of V-shaped. So either sort of like pie or the opposite of what a pie is, a backwards pie shaped lot. And one of the question was like, how do you determine lot width in that condition? And so what we're suggesting here is that you essentially have two definitions of a building line. And so the front one is a standard. It's a line parallel to the front line that establishes the minimum required front yard depth and governs the placement of the principal structure along the front of the street. So that's just sort of standard. And then what we suggest is that you also include what's called a building governing line. And that's where the minimum lot width, when measured at the standard building line, is less than that required for the district, right? So that gets to the question about what happens. And in which the lot is located. A governing building line shall be established parallel to the front line at the minimum depth at which the front line first achieves the minimum lot width. And what we've done basically is given you a couple of illustrations of what that would look like in some different conditions. And so if this is your kind of standard rectangular lot, you've got your front yard setback, that becomes your building line. In here, in this example, in that tapered lot situation, you're at that front yard, right, setback, you have not yet met your minimum lot width requirement. So that gets pushed back until you've met your minimum lot width. That then becomes the governing, what's called the governing building line. The other thing that we wanted to make sure is in any situation where there is a flag lot, we know that you don't allow flag lots, but if you do have any situations where there is a flag lot, this would be the situation where you don't just get to set your building line at where that flag is. It starts where you first achieve the minimum lot, and then you set your building governing line. And then this corner lot is just a reemphasis of the fact that you already have in your standards that on corner lots, you can have two essentially building lines or front yards.
So Adam, just to clarify, this is not changing any definitions or measurements of the building lot or setbacks or anything. You're just providing us additional illustrations to demonstrate how the existing provisions are applied.
Yeah, we're resolving an ambiguity, right? So one of the things that got brought up in the last conversation is like, under your current definition, it is not clear how you would measure where your building line would be, specifically in this tapered lot situation. And so we wanted to provide clarity to that. And then the other thing that we wanted to clarify as part of that is what happens when you have a curved lot line, right? So what we've done is set that as what's called the chord. You learn geometry at some point, right? So that's our chord of the curve, and that becomes your lot width. And so if you haven't met this, which you would here, it would push back. So if this lot were more tapered, it would have to go back until you meet that minimum lot requirement.
And are you proposing to put these definitions in the reorganized ordinance, or are these supplemental?
They would be part of the reorganization. So the recommendations that we put for you all today would be our recommendations to you about what to recommend to the commissioners. If you guys want to make changes to that, we're all ears to those changes. And then just as a reminder, we don't make changes to the ordinance through this adoption process. So it's one single document. What will happen is your recommendations will sort of sit as like a cover on top of the 319 draft and say, these are our recommended changes to this draft.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Vic, we'll start with you. We'll work our way down. Any comments, questions, clarifications?
It's first to go. Thanks for taking us through the 19 kind of points. I just really quick clarification. Accessory building, accessory structure, looks like it's teased out better than the first cut. Then you talk about structures include but are not limited to, yada, yada, yada. Buildings or accessory buildings may include but are not limited to. Sheds are in both. Does that matter? Okay to leave as is?
No, it's fine. I think the way I like to think about it is, sorry, let me find it.
11.
Short-term rental, daycare, cellar, permitting, or adjoining parking pad. Sorry, it's been a long day. Not all buildings are structures, but all structures are buildings. It's like rectangles and squares. I think I have that right.
I
Right?
think it's the other way around.
Is it the other way? It's
said
been a
it the
long
other
day.
way
It's the
around?
other way around.
Okay.
It's one of the two.
All buildings are structures, not all structures are buildings.
Exactly. Thank you. Squares and rectangles.
Okay. No, look, I appreciate, this is what it's designed to do. It's a clarification and modernization effort here. So I thank you for taking us through it. I don't really have any other comments at this moment, but I appreciate the clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No comments. My comments and questions were all addressed, so thank you.
Great. Thank you.
You said at the beginning that the township is lawfully required to include in their zoning ordinance any use that is deemed legal.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've added several definitions for uses that currently aren't identified on the zoning map, okay? Does
Yep.
that put the township in any risk?
It shouldn't. If anything, it's going to help you define what they are, and so you know what to do with them. I'm happy to, consult with the township solicitor to make sure that, he's comfortable with that, but he has seen the ordinance and reviewed it. So,
But as far as the legal use, I understand I can build a craft winery by
right,
definition, but there's still no place in the zoning map that shows that.
right.
So as a developer, would I have a right to say, well, you have to let me build it here?
So I don't think so. Again, I would defer to your township solicitor for, his read on that.
Second thing is, assuming at some point in time, the ordinance gets revised,
Yeah.
how easy or difficult would it be, say, if we wanted to add another residential district or some other type of use? Is that a complete rewrite, or is that just something we can drop right in?
No, you could definitely drop it right in. I think one thing that if you wanted to make the recommendation that we add some reserve sections, which is the way that sort of that is commonly dealt with, where you've got just a placeholder section, so you don't have to renumber every single section after that. That said, I do think as part of the substantive update, we're likely going to, excuse me, be adding sections in here that are going to require more numbers. One advantage of the way that we've done it, though, is, for example, in your current ordinance, it's just a continuous list of numbers. And so what happens is when you guys have added new provisions, you just put it at the end. And so it's not logically organized. And the way that we've organized it with articles that restart at like 14, 15, 16, 17, you could easily add in a commercial district at, 14, 15, 14, 16 without affecting every single section that comes after that.
Thank you.
No, I didn't have any other comments, so, thanks.
I know you just talked to Angela about this and explained this once already. I'm new to the planning commission, so I'm still learning. Can you explain again, for my benefit, that we have to have, if it's a legal use, we have to zone for it,
Yeah.
but we're defining legal uses that we don't have zoning?
Yeah, and that.
Walk me through that a little slower.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of in an interim phase here,
Okay.
right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the place where we're going to have to address all of those. We're going to have to address all of those uses. What we tried to do is put in definitions at this point in time that when we go through the substantive updates and we start talking about like, what is a craft winery? How is that different from a brew pub? How is that different from a microbrewery? We have those definitions to talk to. We can have something where we're all on the same page about where they're at. But we're sort of by necessity at a kind of like interim phase right now.
So eventually we would say, if a craft winery were to be built in Haverford Township, it would have to go in.
It would have to go
O1.
in some district. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's, this is one of those things like, it's not something that we can control. It's something that the state, requires that you do. And so that's going to be, I think, a part of I know is going to be part of the substantive update, is starting to have a question about like, where should these uses that we, know are going to be, out there, where should they be zoned?
And then I had another question about the home occupation definition.
Yeah.
On your slide, you had a sentence at the end about there shall be no one engaged or employed in such home occupation who is not a resident of the dwelling. So your Etsy store example, if I hired like a high school to pack packages for me, then that would not be a home occupation.
That would not be a home occupation. So this was already there in the ordinance as it was there. It's pretty typical to write it this way. I mean, quite frankly, like maybe your neighbor calls you if you hire a high schooler to come help pack, but probably not. What you're trying to avoid is somebody who's essentially running a business out of their home, and they're saying like, oh, I just keep my office here. And we've seen this before where it's like, but you're parking all of your equipment here, you've got employees coming here day and night. It's like, no, that is not a home occupation, right?
Okay, got it. And then I do have a procedural question. I don't know if now is the right time. So in the comments that were emailed in, a lot of them were saying, people felt like there was an opportunity for public meetings. And so just to understand what stage we're in now, we're kind of asking to recommend that we move to stage 2, the reformatting and initial updates, right? But I know we've done surveys, there's been one workshop. Has there been the walking tours and the public meetings?
No, and I do apologize. I think there was some confusion here about what's on the website and just how it was messaged. So, the idea here is that this is really a technical reorganization. We are trying to get this ordinance up to the point to be able to have an informed conversation about what I said earlier. What's permitted in one zone, what's not permitted in another, without have to going through this whole like nested dolls like exercise every time we want to talk about it. We did do the zoning 101s. We did 2 of those where we sort of presented like the basics of zoning. These are public meetings that we're having here going through this. We are quite frankly like scoped for a certain amount of work. We've got a budget with the town. We really want wanted to make sure that our public meetings and our public engagement really focused on the substantive updates. So yes, we are working right now on developing a survey that's going to start to get to like, what are people interested in seeing as part of those substantive updates. We're also working on trying to schedule the first public meeting. We're going to try to get that done relatively soon, where we can start having those conversations about like, you know, what are the substantive updates that people want to see or not as part of this?
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you. So again, just to kind of recap everything that we talked about. So the definition, so there's no map change. There is no adding of any of these new uses. So any of the definitions that have been changed or added, none of those uses that are being proposed as definitions are being added as a use, either permitted or prohibited in any zoning district anywhere in the township. So what we're doing is teeing ourselves up so that when we get into the substantive discussions, we can talk about what those uses are, where they should go, along with any other substantive changes that we want to evaluate through our public engagement process, which, that was a great question, Jen, thank you, is coming up in a more robust public engagement session, because that's when the actual substantive changes are going to be occurring, as opposed to what's being discussed now. So I'm seeing a lot of reactions. I've seen a lot of the comments. I understand that there is maybe we don't have consensus as to what's considered substantive versus not substantive. And I think from a planning professional perspective, what we're doing here is a cleanup, and we would not consider this substantive in that we're not changing the end goals, the end administration of the zoning, the end permitted types of uses, the number of people in a family. None of that is actually changing. We're updating how we're wording it, but we would not consider that substantive otherwise. So I just want to thank our professional experts for guiding us through this process. This is a monumental task to take, I call it a Frankenstein document. The zoning ordinance was drafted 50 years ago. It's been amended so many times. So you just add different things, different regulations. So what you end up with is some inconsistencies, some vague terms, some potential, what am I thinking?
Ambiguities. I mean,
Conflicting, yeah. So you have conflicting standards. It says something in one section, it doesn't say it in another. It's a special exception use, but it's not defined. We've been applying it by policy, but it isn't expressly stated, which just creates that ambiguity. And so the purpose is, of course, to come up with that, standard through the zoning rewrite. So
100%.
I appreciate the opportunity to listen to all of this. At this point, it doesn't sound like we have any other comments or questions from our planning commission. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up to public comment at this time. Because we have so many folks in the room and I want we get to everybody's comments, we're limited to 3 minutes. I will have a timer. So when the timer beeps, I will kindly ask you to please wrap up your comments and allow time for the next person. We also want to try to bucket some of our discussions. So I know that some people have comments specifically about the procedural element of it, and then some people have comments or questions about the substantive nature of the language itself. So I want you to think about if your comment or question falls within the substantive bucket or the procedural bucket. We'll do the procedural bucket first, and then we'll just go systematically through the room. If you have a comment that's kind of a little bit of both, that's fine. Just pick one or the other, and like I said, we'll start with the substantive. So I'm going to start. Sorry? I'm sorry. Procedural. Is that what I said first? Okay. Procedural first, substantive second. If it's both, pick one or the other. So, does anybody have any questions on how we're going to proceed with the? Yes, sir.
I have a mapping question.
A map question? That would be a substantive question.
Okay, want to know where that fell into.
Okay, thank you. Map questions we'll call substantive. Procedural would be notice, postcards, website. Yes, ma'am.
Got nothing?
Sorry?
I received nothing.
Oh, okay, that's a procedural, yep, that's a procedural comment. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started and we'll see how this goes. I'm actually gonna start in the back row on this side over here and we'll kind of go through. So raise your hand and then we'll come up individually. Yes, ma'am. Oh, please, I'm sorry, please come to the. Yes, thank you, I'm sorry. Forgot to clarify that. Please come to the podium. Please state your name so that we have that for the record. If you are comfortable sharing your address, you may. You just can also say resident or non-resident. And I'm going to start the timer once you start speaking. So back row, podium, podium, please. So anybody in the back row who'd like to make a comment, please raise your hands. Okay, seeing none, the next row forward. Yes. Hi, David.
Hi, David Shannon, resident of Haverford Township, 30-some-odd years. The first comment is this is a very fine draft. I've worked a lot with the code over the years, both on the Planning Commission and before the Zoning Hearing Board in my neighborhood, and it's a really good start. The goals are worthy. The effort to restructure is very worthy and a good job. I particularly found the introductory materials, the explanation, and I recommend to everyone in the room to try to read those, because the executive summary and the explanation of what's being done is very good. That said, the problem is that I see is the remaining ambiguity, which, and by the way, the drafting goals are also very good. I won't get into that in my 3 minutes, but the concern I have and the remaining ambiguity is, and you touched on it tonight, what is approval? What is the Planning Commission being asked to recommend tonight? And what are the commissioners being asked to do in a month? It seems like what's being said is, and it was unclear tonight, you sort of touched on it, and others have touched on it. Will there be opportunity, not just opportunity, but will it be clear that approval is preliminary, not final, in the sense that we approve this as a good draft, but only as a draft, and that you really cannot separate, as has been evident in a lot of the comments and your comments, Adam, that definitional, particularly the definitions. I'm not talking about the restructuring, all of that's good, or at least a great start. But the definitions are substantive. They are words. The words are important. The document repeatedly says the definitions are the foundation of the code changes. So we'll get into those code changes later. But the foundation is very important. And those words are very important. You talk about, we have a lot of examples, but we can't get into all of them. But the ones mentioned tonight, including enlargement, brewery, all these are substantive. They're definitions, but they're substantive. So my suggestion is that any approvals be acceptance or as a good draft, preliminary, but subject to change, both as to definitions. They should not be written in stone. There should not be any argument later that any objection to definitions has been waived, or it comes before the commissioners at a later date, and they say, well, the draftsmen, the experts drafted it, and they think it's good, and the steering committee liked it. Give me about a minute. Can I get? Wrap up the comment, please. Okay, and anyway, for a lot of reasons, then it goes before the commissioners, and they say, well, approved by the steering committee, approved by the planner, approved by the planning commission. Are they going to really make any changes, and should there be such a burden on anybody trying to change the definitions to overcome all of that? So I would say just call it preliminary approval, acceptance, and it would be a whole lot better.
Thank you, David. Okay, next in the line, please. Seeing no hands, we'll go the next row up. Yes, sir.
My name's Mike Swinney. I'm a resident in Haverford Town. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think you guys do a great job since the comprehensive plan went through. I watch most of your meetings, and I think you guys are pretty diligent. I am curious, do you ever publish the minutes? Because I don't see them on the website anywhere.
Yes, they are published.
Okay, because I was having a hard time finding them. But I've been a commercial real estate agent since 2001. If I went into a township and needed a variance or a special exception or something like that, and didn't provide notice timely, I wouldn't just be able to rush through, correct? So I think the instinct here as a resident is we're being snowballed because I don't understand why you're rushing. If I didn't receive a notice for the April thing, so why wouldn't you just push everything back a month? Doesn't make any sense unless you're trying to rush it through. I think what Adam said is completely disingenuous. If my neighbor's about to sell their house they were going to put it on the market for $700,000. I have a shared driveway. If I want to put in a microbrewery, I could just do that. You know that's not true. So why would he say that? That if the definition is not delineated, it's not true. So what you're presenting to the residents seems disingenuous and dishonest. And I don't think you are thinking about the traffic impacts. Like, I represent developers who are looking for behavioral homes. You're opening up a Pandora's box, and I don't think you guys are giving enough residents notice. If people are for it, that's great. But most people don't know about it. And I don't think you guys are doing a genuine job. Like the mailer you put out once a month or every quarter, I don't understand why you don't have a whole section on it. Everybody gets those magazines. I just think you guys aren't being honest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in this row? Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name is Peter Willis. I'm a resident of Haverford Township. I live on 854 Buck Lane. I've been living in this house since 1996, and I'm just here to talk about a bike lane that recently got put in. I tried to contact Laura Cavender about it, and then she transferred me over to a woman named Jill, and I sent them an email, and it's just, we turned my street into a one-way road, and I'm just seeing like if there's any chance we can change it back to just a two-way road. I live across the street from a school. It's a little Quaker school, and it's not that much traffic, and like I said, I've been living here since 1996, and it went from a one-way road to a two-way road, and they added about we have just on the other end, so it just goes from Buck to Panmure to Haverford, to Railroad to Haverford. From Railroad to Haverford is brand new asphalt, brand new concrete. It's a brand new road. But from my end of the street, we got 3 times the amount of signs, and we also it's a bike lane to nowhere. So it's just literally just that street. It's not connected to anything, and we got 3 times the amount of signs. So just in terms of beauty, I think it looked beautiful the way it looked the way before, without the signs and without the bike lane. It looks like there is a decent amount of people that have moved into the community that are raising families. But like I said, I've been here since 1996, and there's never been a car accident, and there's never been an accident. So to put that amount of signage up and to add a bike lane for a situation that has never bothered anyone in the past just seems, it bothers me and it bothers my family. I've heard my neighbors talk about it where they don't really like it either. So if there's any way that we could maybe get on the same page so I could go to that meeting, or if it's brought up in the future, I'd be more than happy to show up to that meeting. I just want to keep that on the radar just because it's just, it's a funky change that my family and I don't really like, because I'm the first house that has to go all the way around the block. So it's normally it's just the first house on the right. So instead of just going maybe a 1/10 of a mile, I have to go all the way around the block and up the street. So it's just something that I figured made sense in terms of this meeting that I would like to bring up.
Okay, thanks, Peter. We actually, that would be a question best for the commissioners. We don't have any oversight on that, but I appreciate your comment and thank you for coming tonight.
Is there like a meeting where the commissioners would be here that I'd be able to like talk to them about it, or?
Yeah, the Board of Commissioners meeting, Jamie can give you some information about when that's going to happen
At the end of the
next.
night?
Sorry?
At the end of the night?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Okay. Ma'am, I saw you had your hand up in the back. Would you like to come up?
Hello, my name is Lisa Lerner Wagner, and I live on 70 West Hillcrest Avenue in Haverford Town. It seems it's very slick what you've put together. My concern is that it's sort of backwards in that I never was given information about this. There's some people who received information, and by word of mouth, a lot of people are here through word of mouth. That doesn't seem particularly professional, as the Realtor has said. Snowballing might be the appropriate word. I rushed over here. The person who contacted me said, I think you better come. I've lived in my house for 36 years now. There's a lot of traffic in Haverford Town. There are a lot of kids on e-bikes taking selfies while doing wheelies. So I'm concerned, very concerned. I try to get out of my driveway, it's Russian roulette. The cars are parked all over the place. I'm 70 years old. I'm shaking as I'm trying to inch out of my driveway. I'm concerned. It's a lovely area. I used to be able to count the cars because Eagle Road is parallel to Hillcrest, West Hillcrest. They come down my street to avoid Eagle. Oh my God. And there are more and more kids that aren't on e-bikes going 40 miles an hour. They basically have banned them in California. I'm just worried that somebody's going to get hit, and it's going to be a kid or somebody with a stroller who's looking at their phone while they're strolling. I'm concerned. That's all. And also in terms of the Frankenstein statement that you had mentioned, news carries a lot faster now. So I would think that everybody would be up to snuff to get the information out to the appropriate people so that we don't come in here as pissed as we are. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, we're focusing on the process questions for right now. We'll circle back around to the substantive. And we are, I think, the third row back on this side. Okay, anybody else on this side at all with a procedural question they want to comment? Okay, going back to this side, we'll go in the back. Yes, sir.
My name's Mike Lee. I'm a Haverford Township resident. I also have a question about being snowballed. It seems to me as though the real issue we have is not with you guys, it's with the steering committee. And nobody elected these folks. They don't have open meetings. We have two members here, you guys. I don't know how you can honestly, after coming up with this mess of public participation, participate in this. I mean, Ms. Delosian is also, and Commissioner Fosty-Rupp in the back is also on this steering committee. Totally behind closed doors. And they were the ones who came up with this plan, and we're not even following it. Stage one said extensive interaction, community involvement. We're not doing that. And we're coming up with a document that combines all sorts of stuff together. And how are we supposed to evaluate that unless you guys have interaction with us? I'm not a professional planner, but there's just a right way to treat residents, and there's a wrong way to do it. And this is totally wrong. This is probably the most important thing we will ever do in this township. Everywhere around the country, people are upset about zoning changes. So you're on the steering committee. Can you change this? Can you open it up and make it more interactive for residents?
I can actually speak to it all, if you want me to, Maggie. Our township solicitor did weigh in on this comment, and his response was, there is no majority of the board or the planning commission or any other established committee or commission on the committee of the steering committee for this zoning rewrite, so it is not an official agency that would be subject to the Sunshine Law. And that's all I wanted to say. It is legalese. It is from the township solicitor. There is no majority of the board or the planning commission or other established committee or commission on the steering committee. So it is not an official agency that would be subject to the Sunshine Law.
Yeah, but are we getting sued? Like you said you have to do this because there's lawsuits. Are there lawsuits? Like, why are you going through this process? My commissioner said it was to raise tax money.
So again, just briefly, the concern is to have holes and loopholes in the zoning ordinance. So this is phase one, where it's just the rewrite to take the Frankenstein document and turn it into something sleek that's actually functional, readable, more user-friendly. And then we're moving into the substantive changes to further strengthen the ordinance. So it's part of the process, but I understand the concerns. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. We're gonna stick to the public comments. We'll keep going. The next person we were in the back row still.
Transparency should be part of the process too.
Thank you, sir. And that's why we're having public meetings now. And I'm happy to take more comments. If we can continue next row over here. Does anybody on this side of the room, Dory?
Good evening, and before I start, I wanted to make sure I gave you guys this because I probably won't get through the 3 minutes. My name is Dory Dowdy, longtime resident of Merwood Park section of Haverford Township, Ward 6. I support clear, straightforward zoning ordinance that protects our established neighborhoods. And I'm really confused tonight because I looked at the website and saw a 4-stage process. And I thought we were supposed to have a stage 1, and the project was going to start with that, with promoting a robust community engagement. Township's own website promised surveys, workshops, walking tours, public meetings, and ample opportunities for the residents to share their ideas so they could rewrite what would reflect Haverford's unique character, what makes Haverford Township Haverford Township. Media had that opportunity with IMEG. They had these stage 1, more robust. The only thing we had was the two 1-hour zoning 101 presentations held in October and November of 2025. They were then told that we're in stage 2 right now, I would think, which would be completely policy neutral and non-substantive, only reorganization for clarity and ease of use, and all that the substantive policy changes would be handled in stage 3, which we haven't gotten to yet, as per the website stating that's not targeted for 2027. Yet the township's own Appendix B and in the draft itself shows that a significant number of definitions have been changed, renamed, added, and entirely new terms reorganized or removed. These are not small tweaks. They affect how lots are defined, how density and open space are calculated, what counts as development, and many other core rules that directly impact residents' property rights. Even the township's own frequently asked questions on page 8 of the supporting documents admits this. In response to the question, did changes to the definitions expand or restrict what is allowed? It only answers only in very limited cases. In plain English, the township is acknowledging that some definitions were changed in ways that expand or restrict what is allowed, even if it's only in very limited cases. This feels like misrepresentation, misleading at best. Next thing I want to say is that I did go through and see that there were 88 definitions as per page 5 of the supporting documents that were carried forward with no modification. I was able to extract the entire spreadsheet, bring it into Excel, and I found out there was actually 93 definitions that were marked as pure no change. So out of all those definitions, 191 definitions, because there's a total of 284, were changed, renamed, all the other different categories, reorganizations, name change. So in a sense, 67% have been changed, renamed, added, removed, or reorganized or merged. These are not insignificant or purely technical edits. Every official communication in the township, website, postcards, newsletters, statements from the township manager, Dave Berman, IMEG, the Board of Commissioners, and Planning Commission have repeatedly said this is policy neutral, non-substantive. It won't affect any rights, and they are strongly encouraging public participation. Both of these things, these repeated messagings, leave many residents questioning whether these assurances are fully accurate and whether meaningful public input is genuinely being welcomed at this stage. So last thing I'll say, thank you, Maggie. The Planning Commission, I would say that the Planning Commission should not approve this draft in its current state. All definitions that are marked as being no change, they're pure no change, they can be considered as stage 2, but anything else needs to be going to stage 3. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for a substantive comment on this side? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, procedural, thank you. Procedural, thank you.
Mario Gambescia, member of Haverford Township, Linden Drive. Again, I want to mimic what other people say. You're doing, this is a Herculean effort you guys are going through. And I do appreciate it. I think it's needed. But again, as was said earlier, more communication and transparency needs to be occurring. I received the first mailer, but I never knew a second mailer went out. So I didn't receive the second one, but I received the first one. I also put in on the website, it says put in your email address for comments and communications about upcoming meetings and events. And I've never received any emails regarding this meeting, which was, I put my email address in weeks ago. I should have received something in my email regarding tonight's meeting, and I haven't received anything. So I don't think that those connections are being made. You know, I liked what you did regarding your redlining. Can you put that in the current document? I don't think you're going to do it based on what you said regarding the changes are just going to be an overlay to the existing document.
Yes,
that's what he said, right?
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
So for me to try and understand, I need to know the current, take that to the existing, and then go to the changes. There's any way we can redline into the existing document the changes rather than having them live on top and separate from, because now I have to go from one to the next to the next. It becomes very confusing. And I'm pretty computer literate, and I was working on all of them. And like Dory indicated, there are 197 current definitions in the current ordinances and 284 in the new. Of that, she gave you the numbers, and the percentage are like, there's a high percentage of new and very high percentage of changed, which is fine. Some of them are insignificant changes for definition, clarity purposes, which I agree with. Some of them aren't, such as family. I'm not so crazy about the family one. Particularly the other legal relationships. They may include opening up can of worms regarding domestic relationships that people might argue about. In Pennsylvania, domestic relationships are not recognized. So they aren't a legal standing in the state of Pennsylvania. On a state level, on a municipality level, some municipalities, it is a legal clarification. It is legally binding. So we need to worry about that one. That's an issue. And it's very ambiguous. As far as procedurally, in the definition of accessory structures and buildings, you made a comment on that. And from what I saw in your comment, it was structures and building as defined, proposed, and you were splitting the proposed to two. But you didn't go back to the original. The original definition required a 50% limit on how large that accessory structure can be, no larger than 50% of the principal residence, to avoid building a garage that might, be an airplane hangar.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes.
So you need to look at that one and see why was the 50% initially implemented, and do we need to carry that 50% forward into the ancillary buildings and structures, accessory buildings and structures. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, procedural, any additional procedural public comment? Seeing none, we'll move into all other public comment, substantive and otherwise. We'll start again at the back and work our way forward. So anybody on this side in the back would like to make any other comment? Yes, sir. Sure. If you can wait till you get to the podium, please. We need to capture you for the audio recording. It can't capture you from over there. The microphone won't pick you up. I can, if you would like to speak, I can repeat it so that it gets captured.
No, it's okay.
I'm happy to take your comment or question.
All right. Mapping question is that you got, this isn't a complaint, I just want to know. All the political boundaries and things of the such as Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all going to remain the same, as I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, so just for the record again, this gentleman is asking a question as to whether all of the political boundaries, including all of the ward districts, are to remain the same, and the answer is yes. The zoning map is not the same as the ward district map.
Okay, and you're going to have the various zoning ratings with the definitions and requirements listed out and defined. Is that correct? That's what those things pertain to?
So the question again is asking about the zoning. So you're talking about the zoning
classifications and those codings, I suppose is the best term for it.
Right, so they're, yes, so they're called zoning districts. So the zoning classifications that you're referring to are zoning districts. So like the R1, R2, R3, those districts are all remaining the same, and the district boundaries are remaining the same. There is no change to the zoning district boundaries.
At some point in the process, if it hasn't been done already, will there be some sort of depiction on a graphic or mapping basis, like you already provided so far, that's going to list the various zoning categories within those wards? Are the wards themselves going to be zoned, or are there going to be a mixed match? I would assume there's going to be a mixed match of zoning within the wards. Has that been formulated, or is it going to be formulated?
Okay, so the question is whether the zoning districts are like, is there a mix of zoning districts within the wards? So yes, the political subdivisions of the wards are separate entirely from the zoning districts. So any given ward may have different zoning districts within it. I don't believe there's any single ward that has like a single zoning district.
I wouldn't think so either. I would think it'd be pure. So is that going to be depicted or made available at some point in time in this process later?
So again, right now at this process, we're doing just the reorganization, and there is no change to the zoning districts. There's no change to the zoning map. So you can find the zoning map, and you can find a ward map. I don't know if the township publishes a map that shows both the ward districts and the zoning districts together on the same map. I believe you might have to just look at them one versus the other.
So in order to be able to determine, you say to cross-reference, you pick an individual property, see how it's zoned.
Right.
Within that particular ward.
Correct, yes.
It's going to be done on an individual property basis, I take it then, right?
Yeah, so if you're just looking to look at a map, then yes, you would have to compare like a property address to figure out what ward it's in, and then you can look at the zoning map to figure out what zoning district that same property is in.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else over here? Comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Mejia Smith. I'm a resident of Haverford Town. Thank you all for all your hard work in putting this together. I received 2 mailers. I attended the Zoning 101 in the fall. It feels like there's been a lot of work that's gone up to this point. I'm excited for the reserved section for mixed-use zoning. I'm surprised to find out that we didn't have any mixed-use zoning in Haverford Township, which is surprising because if you go up and down Darby Road, there's all kinds of houses that have like dentist office signs outside, or insurance salesman, or like the bicycle shop that has had the ability to have a house or apartment above it. That's all mixed-use zoning. So like there's plenty of precedent, there's plenty of history for that here in the township, and so I'm excited for that to be part of the next stage when we actually go into like the real substantial rewrites and things like that. Because I mean, the point is we had Easter about a month ago, and I hosted, it was like 14 people at my house, and I cooked for all of them. And now imagine after I was done doing all that cooking, I said, okay, everybody, the ham is here in the dining room, but the lamb is down in the basement, the green bean casserole is upstairs, and the desserts are in the bathroom. Well, that would be absolute chaos. Like, imagine people trying to navigate that. And my 92-year-old grandmother, Haverford High School class of 51, she wouldn't be able to eat because she couldn't go up the stairs. Well, that's what we've done with our communities. Is there any question as to why we have all these concerns about parking and traffic and all that? Because we have to go all over the place to get to all of our basic needs. If we have mixed-use zoning and we allow our communities to be built with all of our needs all in one place, it's going to alleviate all of these types of problems. So thank you for your work. I appreciate the next steps and how we can help preserve Haverford Township and make it an even better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you have a different.
Yeah, I do.
Well, hold on. Can we pause first and get to other people who haven't made their comment, and then we'll circle back around? Sure. Okay. Anybody else over on this side of the room here? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to this side. Yes, sir. Substantive. Honestly, at this point, it's whatever else you have remaining. So any other comments you have remaining, which I thought we were going to bucket it, but it turns out that I'm not sure that was a great idea. So whatever else you have to say, we're opening it up to any comments. So sir, go ahead. Thank you.
Albert Marciano, 8 North Concord Avenue in Havertown. I would ask that you guys could make a recommendation to amend part of the new zoning code. It's a little complicated. So if you look at section 182-405 under special exception requirements, I believe it's for R8. And under telecommunication equipment, which is B3, it talks about that any existing structure must comply with all area and bulk regulations of the district in which the building is located. And then Unit 5 talks about must meet everything in 182-1228. Now, that's for R8. Under institutional, which I'm assuming under the new definition, that is place of worship falls underneath that, but I'm not really sure when or how that's going to change. Like if a church is currently in a different zoning, will that automatically become an institutional when the new map is presented or the new code is presented? Is that an automatic thing? Will it still be? But regards to that, if you look under 182-905, special exceptions, this is for institutional. It does not say that existing buildings must meet area and bulk requirements.
Are you referring to the old code or the new code?
The new code does not. The old code did. I was involved with a cell tower, and we won the zoning board because that was a requirement. And their bell tower was not properly placed in today's standards. So it was rejected under that one. I'm not sure whether St. George, which is another one, they tried to put a zoning in there, whether that was rejected or not. But our current code, if you try and put a cell tower within a place of worship, the building must meet our current setbacks, areas, bulking, all that kind of stuff. This does not say that. So I would ask if you could take that line, which is B3, and put it into the special exception section under the institutional 182-905 so that it's clear they must meet it.
Okay, thank you.
That to me.
Sure.
And I,
Actually, I was going to say, that's a good point. So if what we have in the reorganized code doesn't match the standards of the old code, so thank you for pointing that out. If you can touch base with Adam, or Adam, do you have your notes on that?
I can just let you know right now. So it is regulated in your current ordinance differently. So in the institutional zone, in your current ordinance 182-602, B3, uses by special exception, the only requirement is that it meets the provisions of 182-728, which is the connection to 182-1228 in here. So, that would be something that we should look at. I certainly see that as like an important part of like
I mean, it is a change to our existing zoning and this new
it would
zoning.
be it would be considered a change to your existing zoning, but it is certainly something we could look at in phase 2.
Okay, so thank you for flagging that, sir.
So this is phase 2. Can I make one other thing? It's actually another mistake. I'll call it a mistake in the code.
If I may, we're past the 3 minutes.
Okay.
If you have something specific,
Yeah.
you send it, touch base with Adam and point out the specific, and we'll double check it to make sure again that whatever carries over is what we have existing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
I just reiterate that, especially in advance of these meetings, if you have specific like section references like that you're concerned about, if you can get them to me before the meeting, like by email that go to that, like I can do what I did today, which is to look at them and give a formal presentation. So we're not responding so ad hoc on this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's info@haverfordzoning.com. So it's on the website, and you could also submit it via, there's like a form there. That's how all the comments that we've been talking about came. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll look into it and make sure that they're coming through.
Ma'am, I saw in the back. Yes.
Minutes is hard, but I'm trying. Lynn Elliott, Polo Road, Brynford section of the township, and I'm here on substantive, but I agree with all the procedural comments that everyone has made. It really feels like this is being rushed, and I would really ask everybody to slow this down, keep asking for more changes, and keep working through it rather than just approve it and be on to the next step. But I specifically, for new definitions, I would think accessory dwelling unit would be a good one, co-working space would be a good one, and I think the fitness studio should be split into fitness studio 1, in which there is no amplified music, no amplified instructors with speakers, and that fitness 2 would be the same, but with amplified music and with the amplification of the instructor's voice, and that they would then be regulated differently as to where they go. But I do not want to waste my 3 minutes. The most important one to me is page 49, Office Districts Use Regulations, under B4, Retail Services. It's not specifically defined. There's a little list down there, but it doesn't say specifically retail services. So you have to go to where I found them, the use change log, a totally different place, and you find banks, financial institutions. That makes sense. Retail services in an office zone, real estate, utility collection. That makes sense also. Then what do you find under retail services? Catering establishments. So, catering establishments. You go to the definition of catering establishments, another document. And what does that definition say? Any non-residential room, place, or space where food and beverages are available for consumption that is regularly leased or hired out for a particular function, occasion, or event, and wherein music or entertainment is provided. And these retail services on page 49 in an office district are listed as a permitted use by right in both Office 1 and Office 2. A rental facility with music and entertainment in an office district, this is exactly the kind of business that should not be allowed in any office district, whether by right, by special exception, by conditional use, or by anything. They operate on evenings, weekends, holidays, late hours. They generate food waste as well as disruptive noise. These establishments should be a permitted use in C3 or higher commercial district only, nowhere near residential properties. Office zones are supposed to be the least intensive commercial use. This kind of catering establishment would be the most intensive. I ask that this be revised. Either change the ordinance category from retail services to something that's permitted in a C3 district or higher. Seems like the simplest fix. Call it something like food and entertainment services and locate that category in C3. Or on page 49, after retail services heading, add excluding catering or other food or entertainment services. This seems less acceptable. Someone might challenge that exclusion, but I really ask that you look at that and change that as from being a permitted use in an office district to being a permitted use only in a commercial C3 or higher district.
Thank you.
And I have many others, but I will.
Thank you. If you have specific comments, please make sure that those do get sent by email. We are looking at all, and I mean Adam is looking at all of those. So it was info at haverfordzoning.com.
But haven't you also said that tonight you are going to be voting whether to, forward your recommendations for this to move on?
Yes,
What's
so
the point of us giving all these if you're actually
because
sending these on?
yeah, sure.
I understand that. I think the word that people here are saying is like snowballed here. I want to make sure that we're clear about where we are in the process and what's going on. So the Planning Commission is an advisory board. Okay, so the people standing up here, they don't vote on this ordinance. Okay, they've had a previous meeting about this, and they've had this meeting. By statute, when you're adopting an ordinance, you're only required to have one planning commission meeting. So the township is actually having more than is statutorily required. What's going to happen coming out of this meeting is they would make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. Okay? So the way to think about it is they're saying, this is what we think you should do with this ordinance. Okay? And that can include like adopt, not adopt, or adopt with modifications. Okay? And they could list what those modifications would be. That would go then to the Board of Commissioners, they're going to have, can you remind me?
They're having
Do they have a hearing?
a hearing and then the actual consideration
So
of
they'll
that.
so they'll have the hearing, and then they will have like an actual, if they decide to adopt it, an actual adoption hearing. So when we're saying like, please get your comments to us, please share your thoughts, it is so that we can continue to include them in this process. So this isn't the last time for you to get your thoughts in here. We're not trying to push this through. In fact, like we're taking well more than the statutory required time to get this through to make sure that we can get as many comments as we possibly can. Now, I understand that my words may ring really hollow to some of you. Yeah, I get that, and I understand that there's a feeling here that like we are trying to push this through, that these are substantive updates. I get that. I want to acknowledge two things. That the website was not clear about the process in a way that I think is causing some confusion here. And I want you guys to just know that as we move through the substantive updates, there is going to be public workshops. There is going to be an opportunity to dig into the details here. And that even if this is adopted, I'm not saying it's, going to be.
A lot of,
I know. Well, but I'm telling you that we're going through a process here we are going through a process. And if in the second phase of this, we end up changing, nothing is set in stone. We could change the definitions again. We can move things around again. But we have to get to a place somewhere where we can have a document. Like, how many people here have looked at your current zoning ordinance? And can you guys make heads or tail of it? No, I can't. It took us months to disentangle your ordinance. I see the hands. Give me a second and then we'll do it. It took us months to disentangle your ordinance just so we could have an informed conversation about what is permitted and not. And we really are, and I hear the words, I hear the concerns here. We do not feel that the changes that are made here, like my professional opinion, is that the changes here are not going to substantially change what is permitted and not. All right, so I just want to make that clear. I understand that there are some concerns. There is more opportunity, so when you share your comments via email, we will look at them and we will bring them when we go to the Board of Commissioners to talk about them.
Could you please just state approval, recommendation of approval by this body?
It's an advisory recommendation to.
Because the commissioners value the recommendations of this body highly.
Yeah. And I would.
have a room of 90 people here saying, why are you rushing this? Why couldn't you push everything
We-
1 month?
No, we haven't the plan, listen, we haven't taken a vote on what to do yet, so we're just listening because your input is helpful for us to make our recommendations. Hold on, I'm sorry, please. Your comments are helpful for us making our recommendations, so we're listening to all of your public comment right now. As Adam said, we are advisory to this process. We make a recommendation one way or the other to the Board of Commissioners, and then it proceeds on to them. So if we make a recommendation to table it tonight, then it tables, and we can discuss this later. If we make a recommendation to approve it, we can do so. We can make a recommendation to approve it with conditions to say we want to approve it with these following conditions. We can do that as well. So we're still in the public comment phase, so we haven't actually moved to any sort of motion to decide what to do with it next.
But can you just take your time, put up your hand like everybody else? This is like a back and forth. You said it was procedural and then substantive. And so. This guy's had his hand up for 45 minutes. Yeah.
Well, yes, but because I want to make sure that everybody who has a question gets a chance to ask something first before before you come up a second time. That's all. And I'm sorry, I really want to, I hear the frustration. I really want this to be a collaborative process. So everyone is going to have an opportunity to speak and make comment, and I really do appreciate, and I think all of us appreciate the fact that you all have come out because we hear the concern and the frustration that you did not get the notice about this. And we hear that loud and clear. We hear that loud and clear. So, sir, please go ahead.
Coming out of witness protection for this. My only concern with it all is, and I'm Hugh McKeever, I live in Ardmore, Sunnybrook Lane, is I'm seeing families bringing in unrelated people, and I really think they're running Airbnbs. So I guess an Airbnb would be a boarder?
Short-term rental.
Okay. But they're not related. And I just find that in my situation where I'm at, we had a situation where some of the tenants weren't getting along. So the police were called in. So we had an issue. Police had to come, and the police, to their credit, they came to the residents, didn't realize that there were 3 men living in the basement. So to me, that's a dangerous situation. You've got the individual owning the home with 3 minors. You have 3 men living in the basement. To me, that is just opening up a can of worms. And the police aren't even aware of what's going on in the basement. So to me, it's unfair to the police. So I see your definitions, and I'm just concerned about, I just don't like that you're changing the flavor of the neighborhood. It's not mom, dad, and 3 kids. It's mom with 3 kids and 4 guys living in the basement.
Right, and as Adam noted, we can't regulate something until we define it. So we're adding the definition now, and then when we get to the substantive changes, then we can get into the meat of the question and the concerns that you've raised, because we know that Airbnbs and other short-term rentals have significant impacts on community character. Yeah.
I mean, I've looked through Airbnb trying to just find the addresses and things like that, but it's concerning. So that's all.
Great. Thank you. Okay, our process has kind of got a little jumbled around. So at this point, any comment, any question, raise your hand. I will call on you, and we'll prioritize folks who haven't talked yet. Yes, ma'am.
I think I'm substantive. My name's Meg Wagner, and I live at 2422 Rosewood Lane in Ward 6. The last time I spoke to you guys concerning the interactive map and the houses on Grassland that were in the ROS, you remember I got really bent out of shape. I'm happy the map was, I'm happy that the map that was referenced on the township website has changed. But as I read this, I wonder where the official map has planned future space. I refer to the municipal code. An official, quote, an official map shows the locations of planned future public lands and facilities such as streets, trails, parks, and open space. It expresses a local government's interest in acquiring these lands for public purposes sometime in the future and notifies developers and property owners of this interest. And then it goes into the landowner. Anyway, municipal base maps, existing or future land use maps, zoning maps, or any map in a comprehensive plan do not constitute official maps, though these can be used to help identify areas for the official map. So, no wonder I was so upset, because I thought that ROS across Grassland was going to take out my daughter's house and everybody else, and now we're open space. So I wonder, where is your official map with planned future public land?
I'll just address this briefly. We don't have an official map, right? So the official map is different from an official map in that we have our maps that are our legally adopted maps, meaning our land use maps, our zoning maps, the ward district maps. What you're talking about, what that definition is called an official map, and that is a defined type of map that a municipality can adopt. It's regulated and defined under the municipality's planning code, which is the state enabling legislation that allows municipalities the right to enact and enforce zoning laws. So the official map is, think of it like a map that a municipality puts together to identify public improvements, to say, we want to see parkland here, we want to see trails here. So they adopt that as an official map, which gives the municipality then additional legal tools to be able to use to then acquire that land for those planned purposes. But that is a very specific thing that has to go through a public process. It has to be adopted by the commissioners. There's a whole adoption process that goes with it, and that is titled the official map. So the township does not have an official map, and it would definitely not be part of this at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can hold you to that.
You can.
Okay.
Right? Other planning experts in the room, am I?
I mean,
I can't talk to whether or not, I cannot talk to whether or not Haverford has an official map. The characterization that you just heard is accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't yet spoken who would like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kay Dugery. I'm a resident. Thank you guys all for what you've done. I can't imagine taking a document. I've looked at the plan over the years, and it is unwieldy, so I admire your effort in doing this. The one thing that I would love to say is that everybody moved to Haverford Township because we loved Haverford Township. You either loved your property, you loved your neighbors, your grandparents went to high school here. We know so many families that are multi-generational, and it's because of Haverford Township and the way it is today. I absolutely recognize that as the world changes and as we change, we want to change with it and continue to make it the best place. But I really would ask you to, when you are looking at changes, substantive changes to the township, you really in your heart pay attention to what the changes are going to mean to the community. And I really ask that you do research, so on any changes that you make, what those changes could possibly do to the community. I grew up in a small town in New York City, and it has completely been devastated because of zoning changes. And I love it here. I think everybody here loves it here. That's why they're here. And I really beg you to do research on, if you're going to make any major changes, look to other communities that have done that and look at what those changes have done to the community. It's not always the positive benefit that we think that we're going to achieve, and so I really ask that you do that. On a process point, many people expressed that they weren't happy about getting no notification. I did not receive any of the mailers. I received no notification. I'm very appreciative of the people that walked around and communicated that this was happening. I think that we need more of that. So, again, it is what it is. If we could try to make it better. When we talked about the steering committee and to get the response that it's not applicable to the Sunshine Law, it's that kind of stings a little bit. Basically, somebody brought up that there's a steering committee and why, can those notes be made public? And the response from this body is that it's not applicable to the Sunshine Law. That kind of is a little bit of a frustrating response. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else who hasn't yet spoken? Anyone who hasn't yet spoken? Okay, so repeats then.
This guy over here.
I was gonna say we had, 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, I think.
So the gentleman over there said that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your name
Sure,
again?
Albert Marciano, a Haverford resident. The gentleman there said that he doesn't think there are any substance changes to this document versus our original one. I spent a half hour looking at this because I knew this section, found a very substantive issue where if this was passed, a place where I had a cell tower not approved could be approved because that section was gone. There's also another section here, 182, 1228, which a couple lines within the own section says, oh, you got to meet all the requirements of 182, 1228, the same section. Computer science called that an infinite loop. You're going back to yourself. It might have been, should have been pointing to somewhere else, but we don't know. So I can't see how you guys can.
Really quickly, what section was that?
If you hold my time. 182, 1228, if you look at A5, it references itself. So that
1228, A5.
182, 1228.
Yeah.
A5.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know, it's supposed to be somewhere else, pointing to a different section, and it wasn't updated. I can't see how you guys can approve this when we're finding bugs in IT world again. I mean, you've had a lot of great questions. I agree with that. But if there's no substantial differences in these two documents, can we get a side-by-side of what will change? So we can say, that's unimportant, I'm okay with that. We don't know. We don't know what's missing. And I can't see how you guys could approve this without actually knowing what the differences are between this code and the old code, which can substantially hurt the residents and zoning. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, no, you had wanted to come up again?
And I'm not trying to be rude to your group, and I apologize if I was rude. He's an advisor. It's his opinion that they're not substantive changes, but your residents are saying, hey, we think these are some substantive changes. So that's something, like, I understand he's doing his job, he's a professional, but the idea that you can have any use, and I used microbrewery because he said it, you can't just put a microbrewery anywhere in any neighborhood because it's not listed as a definition. That's not how it works. You'd have to go in for special exception or some type of variance hearing first, so it seems disingenuous. And when you say the Russian doll, like it's a bad thing, it worked for like 50 years. So, but my question is, for when you do make substantive changes, so like Piazza's doing 400 unit development, that's just on the outside of the township. Are you guys going to be considering what the traffic studies and traffic demands are going to be when you're deciding what you can do? So, for example, my neighbor who's going to sell their house, if they were able to make that a duplex and get $3,500 in rent in each unit, which they wouldn't get, but that's what I'm being told people can rent their apartments for, a $700,000 purchase price is a no-brainer because that's 1% monthly rent of the purchase price. There will be people coming in from Lakewood, other parts of New Jersey, New York, who will start buying up houses for like $1.2 million and renting them out. And the impact that that's going to have on the school district is going to be tremendous because Haverford School District is a great school district. Everybody who wants to get into an improved school district is, right now we have 80% people own their homes and 20% rent. So when you do make your substantive changes, there's going to be tremendous out-of-town demand that's going to drive up home prices if you're able to have multi-unit. So like, I can't control if the Savage sisters, I have a shared driveway. If they want to buy that house and do some type of, you can't prohibit certain uses. So people are like, oh, I'm worried about Section 8 or whatever it is. You guys know you can't prohibit those uses. But the changes you do make, there's going to be a lot of demand for the school district. We just knocked down a school building, I think, over on Edgemont. So like, how are those different government bodies talking to each other about what changes you make to the zoning ordinance? How is it going to affect traffic, density, schools, safety? Like these are, when do we get to chime in on all that? Thanks.
Thank you. David, and then we'll go to Mike. Okay, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Are you Mike Sweeney? Yes. Okay, thank you.
I'm Mike Lee, Township resident. I've heard a lot of really good substantive comments tonight from just this small group of people we have here. We have 50,000 residents in this township. We really need to reach out to everybody to get their opinion on this. And we need to have outreach to do that. I think most people are here tonight because they got a flyer, because some residents walked around and passed them about. It's nothing you guys did. And we have to reach out to the 50,000 people. I think it's the height of arrogance to think that you guys know everything. The residents know a lot. And there's, out of 50,000 people, there's plenty of people who know a lot about zoning. We need to include folks. And I hope that's what you tell the Board of Commissioners, that we have to reach out. It's too important. So, thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of specifics. The area that has seen a lot of dispute in our township and throughout the Commonwealth is the issue of non-conforming uses, as I believe the plan mentions. That's a particular problem in the Brentford section, which at the time of the existing code had 28 non-conforming uses, and has been a really hotly contested issue before the zoning hearing board and in the courts, as I said, in our own township, but also throughout the Commonwealth. And there's a large body of law on that. And that any change or revision to the non-conforming use substantive provisions are also in their own way procedural and may result in changes to the definitions. Other key areas that have been litigated around the state, and not so much in Haverford, but in Lower Merion, are car washes. There may be some need for clarification of that. I was pleased to see the convenience store with gas station with convenience store is a separate definition now, which has been another issue in the township and elsewhere. That may need further clarification, but I think it's a good improvement. There's mention of ambiguities in the municipality planning code that are being resolved in this draft. It would be helpful to, in addition to the summaries, to show, and the comparisons, to show what are the ambiguities in the municipality planning code or in the township code that are being resolved in the new draft. Ambiguities means there's two or more different definitions, different reasonable interpretations of the words. When you say we're resolving ambiguities, you're saying we're picking one, which is, of course, a substantive change. So it would be helpful to see that, what those are in the definitions. What else? The 88 or more unchanged definitions, are those meant to be not changed ever, or not, at least there'll be a presumption that they're not being changed? Is that the concept? To the board, to the Planning Commission. We heard tonight, I never got an answer to my question, what is approval? What does the planner mean by approval? But
The answer to your question, David, is they're expecting the Planning Commission to recommend approval of this document with whatever changes we deem necessary to the Board of Commissioners. That's what they're expecting tonight. That's what the township's expecting to happen tonight, a recommendation for approval. You know, we don't approve anything, we just recommend it, okay? And our approval could be based upon the way it's written now, or rewritten with certain changes, or we could say we don't think it's ready for approval, maybe we got to look at it a little further.
Understood. If the approval means approval with whatever changes we propose, that seems to me very narrow. Recommendation of approval, thank you, means approval with, let me wrap up. The statement was made that it's not written in stone, the draft, by the consultant. If that's the case, I urge the Planning Commission to, in its recommendation, include that concept clearly, so that the Board of Commissioners do not take a recommendation of approval as a presumption that it is not to be changed if it hasn't been not recommended.
Okay, thank you, David.
To conclude, just one sentence. I have never approved anything, either here or.
Hold on, I'm sorry, David. Do we have other people? Again, it's
Can
almost
I have
9:30 and I want to
sentence?
make sure,
Can I
just want to make sure that we have other
Maggie,
people.
can I finish my sentence?
David, we're
Please.
really trying to get through
I'm
everybody.
almost done. I have a sentence.
One sentence.
Contracts, codes, statutes, peace treaties never get drafted never should be drafted, never are drafted by approval in one piecemeal. They get drafted as a whole, reading the whole document before there's a recommendation of approval. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Elena Kane. I'm a resident of Haverford Township, Steel Road in Havertown. I would be interested in clarification on the proposed change of the definition of the word lot. It says here that a parcel or tract of land identified by a unique tax parcel number, description set forth in the deed, or other instrument vesting title in the owner of record, or the instrument dividing or allocating land, air rights, or subsurface rights below the surface of the land. So I'm hoping that we can get a little more clarification on that, as it seems like
Where are you reading that definition from?
from the document, it was
Which,
the change of the definitions.
It's the proposed.
That's the proposed definition. Because it seems that this change is designed to modernize the definition of a zoned lot to accommodate complex, high-density, and three-dimensional developments, particularly in urban areas. And it moves beyond a simple flat parcel to include air and subsurface rights, allowing developers and municipalities to treat them as distinct developable real estate interests. So, in summary, wording like this is a shift towards what I've been told is form-based or performance-based zoning. And I think that's a big reason why so many residents are concerned about the changes that are going to happen here for us. Can you tell us if these proposed changes will preserve our town of the beautiful neighborhoods we have?
You're asking specifically about the definition of lot, if that'll...
Well, I'd like to, if we at some point can get clarification on that, of what they're talking about, allocating land, air rights, and why that needs to be included in our zoning.
So, yeah, go ahead. If you want.
I can do this. So it's just a more inclusive definition of what is a lot, right? So this doesn't change anything about how you would regulate building on a lot, right? So the question's going to come up at some point, what is a lot? Right? That's a question that needs to be defined. And so what it's talking about here is like a parcel of tract or land identified by a unique tax parcel number, which is the most common way like your home or like your business would be defined by a lot. Description set forth in the deed or other instrument vesting title in the owner of record. So if you've got a deed and demonstrate like where the lot is, dispute about the boundaries of that lot, right? Or other instrument dividing, allocating land, air rights, or subsurface rights below the surface of the land. So I want you to think about this. Like, if you were to enter into like an agreement, right, with your neighbor or where a lot is, and you had a, let's say you bought part of their land from them, right? And as part of that agreement, you allocated saying like, hey, I also get, all the land that goes down and all the land that goes up. That's included in this definition of lot. So it's a more inclusive definition. It doesn't change, like, I think you said something about like form-based codes or performance zoning. That's not the purpose of this at all. It's to be more inclusive, to be clear about what is a lot and what's not a lot. And that's why below, if you look at that diagram isn't meant to illustrate like a particular like development. It's just there because it's easier to draw all the lots on one diagram, so you can see when you're defining like what is a corner lot, what is an interior lot, what is a flag lot.
So doesn't this, it seems that does it open the door to a more vertical building?
No, so the definition of lot is more inclusive, but the zoning district would still define what maximum height a building could have, the maximum number of stories a building could have. So just by granting air rights within the definition of a lot, the actual type of development, size, bulk, height, density, all of that is still defined by what the zoning district would otherwise permit, and those standards are not changing. So you're not going from, if you have a quarter-acre lot with a 2.5-story house, you couldn't all of a sudden build a 5-story apartment building there if that isn't otherwise permitted within the zoning district. So it doesn't grant you additional development rights. It's just saying that space, that three-dimensional space, as opposed to just being a two-dimensional space that the lot definition is now, you're now considering a three-dimensional space as inclusive within the definition of a lot.
So I can sell part to my neighbor, my part of my land, like you said earlier, of my property to my neighbor. So from just a quick search, it says that I could buy the airspace from my neighbor.
No, so I want to be clear about this. So if you look at your current definition, the only way that a lot is defined is a tract or parcel of land held in single or separate ownership, right? And I think the most important way to think about this is where this definition is going to come up the most is in defining what is a lot, right? When trying to understand where maybe like a lot boundary is, okay? And the new definition, it gives you like actual things to reference when you're trying to understand it. So it references something that's identified by a unique tax parcel number.
Right.
Right. So now when you're trying to dispute, like, is this a lot or not? Does it have a unique tract parcel ID? The next one is it described, set forth in a deed or other instrument? So like, do you have the deed for your house? Is it demarcated there? And then the following part is other instrument dividing or allocating land. Right? So if there's another like contract that you've entered into, right? So it's basically enumerating documents or things that you would reference to define a lot, rather than in your current definition, which just says it's a tract or parcel of land held in single or separate ownership. So it doesn't give you any reference points, and this is giving you that reference point.
I understand the reference points of like if you have your land surveyed, so
Yeah,
they mark the
exactly.
corners and you know exactly.
Exactly.
But how do you mark the air?
I do want to move on. If you can stick around, I'd be happy to talk to you after.
Okay, yeah, that'd be
explain
great.
further.
It's just-
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I saw a hand, ma'am, with the glasses in the back. Did I see your hand? No? Okay. Yes, sir.
I had asked the substantive question about mapping and cross-referencing the
Yes.
political boundaries with the zoning, and the answer to that was that the zoning classifications were to be determined on a per address basis. Okay, I understand that. I have a follow-up procedural question then from that substantive question, which is regarding notifications. Along the way with this process, are we going to be notified of the proposed zoning classifications of our property along the way prior to it becoming finalized? And then when it does become finalized, are we going to be notified of what the actual zoning classification is finally?
Okay, so the question is, are residents going to receive notification about what their current classification, their current zoning classification is, and if it changes, will they receive notice? So to answer the question, we are not proposing to change any zoning districts. We're not proposing to change the boundaries of the districts. We're not proposing to change the actual zoning map. If we were to change the zoning map, meaning the zoning district boundaries were to change, then yes, you would be notified under state law, the municipality's planning code. You do have to notify folks who are within the boundaries of a zoning map change. However, if there's going to be any changes in our substantive discussion that would change, say, any zoning allowances, so if we change the uses or setbacks or something that's otherwise in the zoning district, you will not receive notification about that. That is a zoning text change that would amend the zoning allowances within a certain district, but the law does not say that we notify folks for that. We only notify people when the zoning boundary changes itself. So if you want to stay informed as to what the changes are in the zoning district that your property is in, that is the purpose of these meetings and all of our future outreach and other engagement sessions that we're going to be hosting. But no, you would not receive notification just for zoning text changes, only for zoning map changes.
Text changes are substantive. Change the use, restrictions, or freedoms. Why would we not be notified of something substantive like that?
The law doesn't require that.
So I think there's a difference here between what's like legally required, and if you sign up for updates on the website, you know, you will get an email when we go through the public.
So I want to do this. If you did not get a mailer, if you did not get an email, after this meeting, come up to me. Give me your address, give me your email address, and I will make sure that it is included. Okay, I will double check. If you did not get it, just one thing. If you did not get an email, please do check your spam. Sometimes when you get an email from someplace like an info@haverfordzoning.com that you haven't got before, it does end up in people's spam.
Thank you. Any other, oh, I'm sorry, was that it, sir?
Yeah, is there more of this meetings or is there more? I appreciate the forum, don't get me wrong. Are there going to be more opportunities to interact?
Yes. So the process next, so we came into this meeting with the expectation that this is the second time that we're seeing the zoning reorganization draft. The expectation was that we were going to make a recommendation to the commissioners tonight, and then this draft would move on to them. Following that, we are then entering into our substantive discussion phase, which is going to include walking tours. I know some of the commissioners are going to be hosting ward-specific events. There's going to be more public engagement sessions. Adam explained earlier there's going to be a community survey sent out. So again, I thank you for double checking on everyone's email, because that will certainly be shared out. And I'm really grateful that we had so many public here. So yes, all of those are going to be held. And then the Planning Commission, again, we're advisory, but we are going to be then reviewing whatever the steering committee sends us. And full disclosure, yes, Angelo and I are on the steering committee, but we're going to be working through those substantive changes, and then those are going to be coming back before the Planning Commission for review, public discussion, public engagement, and then same thing again, because we're advisory, we receive those, we make comment on them, we then make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and then ultimately it's the Board of Commissioners who decide what gets adopted or not.
I just have a comment regarding quote-unquote text changes. Those are words, and they carry a lot of weight. For example, first part of the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, not the establishment of religion. That's 2 words, but it's huge. An establishment of religion is one thing. The establishment of religion is a theocracy. Okay, so I just wanted, that's my comment on text changes with regard to not being substantive. I disagree, and I believe that they are.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kim Sweeney. Just one question. You just mentioned that you are making your recommendation to the commissioners. I thought you were going to decide. You just said that you were going to give your recommendation to the commissioners. Moving forward, you just said.
Yeah, because the recommendation doesn't mean to pass. The recommendation is what we decide to do tonight, which could be recommend approval with conditions, recommend denial, or table it. Those are our 4 options.
I thought you already made your.
We have not made a decision. We have not made a motion. We have not, had no discussion on the actual motion.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I wasn't sure.
All right. Thank you.
Hi again, Dory Dowdy, Haverford Township. I guess from what Mr. Tech said that the website and the stages wasn't really accurate. Can that be reflected of what we're hearing that that's the case? It's very confusing. The word phase is used, the word stage is used, and it's just really, I thought the stage 1, when I had done some research about the history of what IMEG or FHI Studio had done, they had done zoning code changes in media borough in 2022 to 2023, and I heard that they did a very big stage 1 phase where it was all those things were done, and it seems like that's happening later, where how do you get, I mean, to me, when you do something, you start with something that you want to become, like you want to do, you get input from the residents, and then you go forward, but it's almost like it's happening backwards. I don't really understand why this is happening this way. It's really very confusing for all of us, and to hear that you're going to be doing the substantive changes in a time when it should have already been happening to get the input from the people of what they really want in their vision. I'm really confused. I just wanted to say that. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am. And then after this, if there's anybody new who hasn't spoken, but at this point it's 9:30 and we've had multiple repeats, so please make your comment and then I think we should wrap this up.
Lynn Elliott, Polo Road, and this is actually procedural. I just want to check, if you decide, for instance, to vote to table this tonight and not vote to recommend approval and sending it on to the commissioners, would you then schedule the next planning commission meeting to have more of this public discussion where we would try to get the word out to lots of people and where we would have a chance to send people who do things like substantive changes, and would we be able to submit them then to Ms. Jelosian so that you would all be able to review them before this gets recommended then for approval and sent on. So that would be my request, that you table it and continue to ask for more of this input and schedule another planning commission meeting with as many public. I think the residents would really appreciate that as a slowing down of the process, but adding more input to it, not just tabling it and then trying to figure something out, but scheduling next meeting, we're gonna do the same thing all over again, and we're gonna try to get more people to come out here and voice their concerns, opinions, and get substantive changes into Ms. Jelosian. So, thanks.
Thank you. A new voice, yes, sir.
I'm new. Hello, Brendan Neefsey. I have been a resident with Havertown for 30 years, and I own a business in Havertown, BJK Masonry. And so I'm going to say this, I get a little stage fright. Good evening, my name is Brendan Neefsey, owner of BJK Masonry and Restoration. My father came to America from County Sligo, Ireland, and worked incredibly hard to build a life, a business, and these garages that are in Havertown that allow myself to serve the community. He even helped the township in the blizzard of '97. And he poured everything he had into these buildings that are on West Hillcrest, parallel to Eagle Road. And these garages are not just structures, they are what allow my business to restore homes, maintain historic masonry, employ local people, and continue serving the community responsibly. My hope is simply that any future zoning language remains clear and fair, so small businesses that relied on prior township approvals can continue operating without uncertainty. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, any final comment from anybody who hasn't yet spoken? Okay, hearing none, I am going to close public comments. So, the next thing that we'll need to do then is to put a motion on the table for how to proceed with what we have before us. So as we've articulated, this is the second time that we have seen this draft, so the Planning Commission has had a couple of months now to review this. We have provided our initial feedback to IMEG, who has made those modifications that were presented to us earlier this evening. We have heard from the public. Thank you all for those who are still here, and for everyone who was here prior giving their public comment. Greatly appreciate your time and investment in this process. So I believe that when we, prior to public comment, a lot of our questions had been resolved in terms of what we had previously commented to our consultant. So the question now is, what is the will of the Planning Commission? Would we like to proceed, or what is the will? So if somebody would like to make a motion, we will entertain that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we recommend approval and the commissioners approve it with amendments or not, does it go in E-code and become the new zoning code right away, or is this just a draft to work off of?
Yeah, so two points. The commissioners don't have to do anything that you say.
right? So you could recommend,
Well, and
you
they
could,
could still approve
they
it.
could still approve it, that it's going through a process. But yes, if the commissioners adopted it, typically what they would do is do something similar to what you did, is if there were any amendments, they would adopt it with said amendments, and then it would go on to E-code, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Can I just,
Let me,
no, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just gonna reframe what we're voting on.
Please.
Or, oh, okay. Well, let me start by this. Little history. We're about to turn 250 years old. The Committee of Style was appointed to help massage the Declaration of Independence 250 years ago after Thomas Jefferson wrote the first draft. I think of that as like the steering committee we're talking about. Then the Committee of Style put the Declaration of Independence back out to the Continental Congress, voting on it, debating it, back and forth, public comments. We are at, steer me if I'm wrong here, but we are at that phase for part one of this process. And part one being what we're about to vote on right now, after comments, and it's been 2 iterations now, 2 planning commission meetings, recognizing that it has been out there for a time. However, part of the process, some mailers did not make it to some residents, regrettably. We are now voting on part one of this process being, hey, the document as is, this old document, Frankenstein document, not workable to even move on to a phase 2, which, by the way, phase 2 would have public comment, a whole other process to go back and forth. Think of Committee of Style back to massaging that, then back out to public comment. Tonight is to vote on, do we agree that it is at current redrafted form, the definitions make sense, they have provided modernization and clarity to the zoning, and that's what we would either recommend, table, or say no, commissioners, at this point. It does not. It is not a wholesale policy change. It is not a zoning code upgrade or update. So I say that out loud. I mean, can you confirm or deny? Does that analogy make sense? I'm saying this because we're recording it. Anybody that has left because it's been a long night can go back and watch this if they so choose. Is that a fair metaphor? I mean, that is where we are in the process. It is phase 1. It is, the document is modernized. The definitions are clearer. Here you go, Board of Commissioners, yay, nay. That's how I'm framing it. Adam, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
Did they say you're adding 67% new definitions?
No, not adding.
I think your analogy is not even applicable. You have a document, it's like the U.S. Constitution already existed, going in and changing definitions. And you had a lot of residents say, hey, table it.
I am happy to respond to that, but I don't want to drag out any longer. I'm glad to.
I had 2 basketball games, or 1 basketball game and 2 baseball games skipped to come here because it's important. And you guys are doing important work.
For sure, sir. I had multiple sporting events also I skipped.
You're changing the whole
I'm sorry, if I can, public comment is over. We are at this point now debating our motion among the Planning Commission. So I appreciate the follow-up comments, and we're well aware of the sentiment of the community tonight.
Is it still to me?
So, yeah, so you.
I will yield my time to another commissioner or a planning member.
Tim, do you have? There's still no motion yet. We're still just in our debating phase. This is also now part of the public process, is that the Planning Commission members now are debating. This is not done in a back room. This is being done, so you're hearing our philosophy on this and how we're moving forward with making the decision after hearing all of the public comments. So this is the time now for all of the Planning Commission members to talk out loud about how we want to proceed.
So without making a motion, this is where I stand after the planning commission's meetings we've had so far and listening to the public comment, as well as the planning commission comments throughout the process. I think that this is a substantial improvement from where we are now as a township. I think this is a great tool and stepping stone to get us where we all want to be. I think it would be I think there's also a lot of concerns that there's still some unclear and refining that can be done on specific code sections. I know the planning commission, I had several comments. Those comments were reviewed today and, accepted or all laid out as to what the path forward would be based on the flags that were raised. There was additional minute comments raised this evening, specifically with the code sections that were referenced, and I think those are getting passed on to Adam. I think those are really critical for the board to see and to consider. However, I think a recommendation of approval with the suggested changes that Adam reviewed today based on the comments received prior to this meeting, as well as recommending to the Board of Commissioners that they continue to engage with the comments that are received from the community, because it is a large document, and while we can all go through it, there are going to be, the more eyes on it, the better it gets, the changes get picked up. So, in summary, I think it's a recommendation for approval with the suggested changes, with the condition of suggested changes, and continuing to work with public input comment and bringing those comments in the same fashion in front of the Board of Commissioners.
Thanks, Kim. Angela?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, if we were to vote approval or recommended approval of changes, we've talked about so many things tonight, I don't know what I'd be voting on. I think there's still things that need to be cleaned up as far as inconsistencies in the new document. I mean, a couple points were raised tonight that are obvious. I don't want to call them mistakes, but they're inconsistent with what the old ordinance specified. We made several recommendations to change some of the definitions. So my feeling is, and we've heard it a lot over the years, that it seems as though not everybody got notices the way they should have gotten notices. Okay. So that being said, I think it would be prudent to table this for the time being, to give Adam a chance to make all the final changes that we talked about tonight so we could see exactly what we're voting on, with the understanding that if we come back here, we're only talking about these changes. We're not talking about the next phase or anything like that, okay? This is an opportunity for you to see that we are listening to what you're saying and we're trying to incorporate those things into this document. And if it costs us a month in the time frame, to be honest with you, I don't think that's a deal killer here. So that's my feeling.
So the comment I want to make about the timing of everything is the next step in the process. We need to plan all of our upcoming community events, right? So the additional public engagement process, the walking tours, the survey. So there's like a whole slew of stuff, right, that we've talked about coming up with the next step in the process. We're coming into the summer months. I know a lot of residents complain about not being able to participate in things over the summer months because we have public meetings, they are here in person, and a lot of folks travel. It's the summer, it's vacation. So we try to be very mindful as well that there's potentially less opportunity for engagement during the summer months because of that scheduling conflict. So I do want to be mindful of all of the feedback, and I do I do want to, express concern that folks didn't get the notice. At the same time, I do want to highlight the fact that there are other ways to get information. So this is not to say you should have found out about this some other way, but just to say a yes and. Yes, it was regrettable that the flyers didn't go out, and there's other opportunities to stay engaged and get information through the website, through social media, through your ward commissioner. So there's. I'm sorry. I'm speaking. Please, I'm speaking. It's my turn to. I understand, and you've made that very clear. Thank you. So I want to be, please, the time for public comment is over. We are debating right now. I would really like to get through my comments. Thank you. And I'm going to get derailed now because I had a thought process.
Other ways to engage.
Let me just get, I'm just receiving a lot of feedback right now. So, I know. I just want to make sure that everyone feels like they have had a chance to be heard. I also want to be mindful of this process, that we have had this for a couple of months, that this is the second time that we're looking at it. I do think that there are my ultimate goal is that the code, as it's written, is technically sound, in that if there's any inconsistencies or errors between the old code and the new code, that those get resolved. I do feel that the matter of the substantive changes is just going to have to be a point of disagreement between me and what I've heard tonight. I am a professional planner. I have a master's degree in planning. This is what I do for a living, so I understand these documents. And these documents are not easy for the layperson to understand. I equate this to if you were to hire an engineer to design, say, a stormwater facility, you're not going to necessarily be able to look at those plans, or say a structural engineer designing a building foundation. You're not going to necessarily be able to look at those plans and say, I understand exactly what's going on, because not everyone is a structural engineer. So what we're trying to do is make this as clear as possible, given that this is a very technical document. It's filled with a lot of legalese, and we've heard a lot of your questions and concerns, and I do feel that where this document is in a good spot, and that we have to trust our experts that we hire to do this for us. So you trust your structural engineer to design the building for you, and I feel that it is our trust in our consultant that we've hired through a competitive process that they're going to do the best job for us, and we're putting our eyes on it to make sure that it continues to improve. So I'm still deciding on what the right choice is.
Okay. Well, I guess first, thanks to people on the steering committee. It's probably a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, more work than I probably fully understand. Also want to appreciate all the public comments. A couple people came out last week. It may have been only 3 or 4 people, as we saw way more people out here this week, or this month. I can definitely commiserate that it is supposed to be an open forum. There's supposed to be legally required 1 month to do it. I kind of feel that if people aren't getting all the notices, is it really a full public comment? So I'm inclined to table it. Part of the other thing is there's been, I don't mean that necessarily. There's been a lot of different items brought up and some clarifications. It could be beneficial next month to kind of review where they are, what the differences are, and what any updates would be, so people kind of have a full understanding of what we're voting on. So that's kind of where I stand.
I appreciate this document. I think it is very helpful and has helped me to understand our zoning a lot more than trying to look at it on E-code. And I trust the professionals that this is a good planning document and that it will move us in the direction that we want to move as a township. I share some concerns that notifications weren't received on time, that some people have said that they've submitted comments that perhaps you didn't get through the email or other forms, so we need to check on that. And I am concerned that if we say that we want this to be a public process and have community engagement, and we don't take that feedback now and take adequate time to incorporate those comments before we submit for approval, that we may lose public participation later on when it's even more important. So I would be inclined to table it till next month's meeting so that we can sort of organize everything.
One more thing. We can, Adam, we can work on, regardless of what is about to go here. Phase 2 has to be clearer on the website, like the process there. We can work on that. Just sans what we're talking about now, right? That's something that we can easily work and do.
Absolutely.
I'm talking like next steps in very clear red, I don't know, whatever color letters. But click this link.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe that is a notification that goes out to your already existing email distro that hopefully folks,
Absolutely.
maybe have to search the spam folder for as you recommended. But okay.
Yeah, and
Make one comment. I do regret that some people did not get the mailers. The mailers did go out.
No, I mean, on the flip side, there's how many residents of Haverford Township? I don't want to be argumentative here at all. I'm trying to be this is where also my head's at too. There could be 1,000 people that got the mailers and throw them in the trash and don't care.
Well, and
everybody's opinion matters.
We also have to rely on the post office and on mailing lists
For sure.
to get the people out there.
What is in my head, and this is for the rest of it, is we've got to be careful. Everybody's opinion matters. We are trying to balance what is logical and sensible versus getting too wrapped up in process where we are still a year from now looking at the same Frankenstein document that barely anybody really understands. So, number one, for sure, let's get the website updated with process phase 2, because I think from what I'm hearing, that is the substantive part of this is a massive, massive endeavor that we need to be more careful with taking public comment on and making sure that there's transparency there. So I think that's all, we're all in agreement on that.
I think if this were to be tabled to the next planning commission meeting, my understanding of the process, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that Adam would take the comments received, the public comments received, any additional comments received after this meeting, put them into a spreadsheet like he did between the last planning commission meeting and today. That would get presented at the June planning commission meeting. We would review it again, receive any public comment again, and at that point, we would decide what to do, going through this same process.
Yes.
Again.
Yes. I mean, I will be clear here. Like in comments that I get, we did get comments about the process. We did get some very general comments, like these don't feel like substantive changes. That is not something that I can work with, right? Like if there is, and we've asked this over and over again, and people have identified, if there are places where the zone was identified in some way, there's a special exception, it should be permitted. Let's jam that. Somebody earlier today called out the telecommunications issue. I've been looking at my laptop. I think we got it right, but if we got it wrong, we will fix it. But we need substantive comments on changes
if that's going to be the direction, because quite honestly, I can't do much with these definitions are substantive. We've talked about, quite frankly, there are requirements that we have to meet in terms of like the definition of family. If the comments that come back here are the same comments again, I don't like this definition of family, and you don't like our understanding of the law, there's not anything I can do about that, right? I have a professional obligation here to make a recommendation about what I think is best for the township. So I'm on board if you guys want to table this. I quite honestly, I've been taking notes through all of this. I got a very few substantive comments. The definition of Airbnb is something we have to look at. We have to look at the telecommunications equipment. But beyond that, I didn't get a lot of like, hey, this section is not as it is in the current order.
Why does border have to be 30 days? Can't it be 15?
So that's another thing that I will say this. If you have questions that you'd like me to.
That would be my comment, because I know behavioral health.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll address the board. If residents and if you all would like to submit questions, like why does a border have to be 30 days, and you'd like us to bring clarification to that, we could also do that.
So, just to summarize for my own takeaway, you're saying there's a list of 3 to 5 items that are technical code references that this A to B did not translate 100%.
I would say that.
And that's less than 5 items as received at this meeting at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you could make a recommendation to fix cross references where they were there. The one that the gentleman pointed out, I identified that. I'm not sure exactly what that would be. I have not seen in the comments as I've been looking anything where we got anything wrong based on these comments.
Okay.
What about there were multiple people who said, can you redline the document?
We're having our debate here, so
What
listen.
about redlining the document?
Sir, I'm sorry. Again, we heard that that is not something that is being proposed at this time. It's not going to be a red line document. It is going to be the addendum that will summarize the changes.
Just be super clear on the process here of how these meetings are structured. Public comment was officially closed. The purpose of this is you're seeing our open debate. You guys don't want us to have this behind closed doors. We're having our open debate now where planning commission members can hear the true thoughts of each other's members before they're asked to make a decision on anything. So just collecting information so that personally when I vote that I feel strongly in what I'm voting for. So, sorry, Adam. Thanks for sticking with me here.
So, yeah, no, the other one that I wasn't exactly, I'll go back and watch the recording. The catering establishments was something there.
Right.
Although if I was following it correctly, I think there was a misunderstanding of the documents that were being presented, whether it was the use change log versus an actual definition, but that would be another thing to verify.
Okay, so my takeaway was there were 3 to 5 cross-reference questions that were brought up tonight through the public comment process that deserve further investigation. It's my understanding that if we were to recommend this for approval, that further verification could happen in the same way during the Board of Commissioners process, because they will have a minimum of 2 meetings, just like this one. But those meetings will be in front of the Board of Commissioners who are actually doing the approval. We are just doing the recommendation.
Yeah, and in fact, your recommendation could include to look at those things, to fix where, in the instances of where those were an issue.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, Kim, I think that speaks to kind of where I am with this, and that I do think that we've more or less hit on all of the actual substantive changes. I shouldn't say that. We've hit on all of the kind of technical questions. I don't really believe that there's a lot of outstanding ones. I think the one, Angela and I were looking at this, the retail services. So in the O1 and O2 districts, there was the question about related to the catering, whether that qualifies as a retail service. I'm looking at the old use definitions, I would just want to clarify do you have it up still? Because the old section says, in the O1 office district, it says an office building or offices of an administrative, executive, or governmental agency, but not including shops or retail sale facilities.
So, sorry, we're in, I'm just trying to pull up the right section. So we're in,
The old code section is 182-302.
okay.
So I would just want clarity on that. But ultimately, I think that setting aside the procedural concerns, which are very well duly noted, I think that we've looked at this and provided feedback, and then we don't have enough substantive things that there's, to me, if we move forward with a recommendation with conditions of the recommendation to verify and clarify some of these outstanding technical issues, I would feel confident that we would be able to navigate those so that when it comes before the Board of Commissioners for the public hearing, we will either have corrected those or at least have a document that would address those points that could be then clarified at that time. So I don't feel the need that what is before us or what's still outstanding warrants another meeting back to the Planning Commission. I think that we can make our recommendation with conditions, and that will satisfy any outstanding technical questions. So, anything else from the Planning Commission? And is there a motion on the table, or would there be additional discussion?
I have a question. For the drafts on the planning website, we have done a nice job with the draft update and the supporting documents, but you gave us a nice spreadsheet of the additional changes. And then there's been some more brought up today. Will those be made public and put on the website at some point?
Yeah, we can put those up and on the website, yep.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir, for attending tonight.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation that we table this discussion for another month to give Adam, our consultant, enough time to fully document all the changes that we discussed tonight, so that when we meet again, we'll have a clear understanding of what we're voting for.
I'll second.
Oh.
You want it?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, so Angela made a motion to table, and Jen made a motion, seconded the motion. Is there further discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call. All right, Vic?
It's yay or nay?
It's yay or nay. So yay would be in agreement with the motion to table. Nay would be in opposition to the motion to table.
Nay.
Kim? Yay.
Yes.
I vote nay. Steve?
Yay to tabling.
Yay.
Okay, the yeas have it. 4-2, motion is tabled. All right, so folks, for your FYI, so I guess this will be coming before us then in our June meeting, so Jamie will,
When is your June meeting?
when,
The second Thursday?
so the next meeting of the Planning Commission is going to be June 11th. We'll convene at 7 p.m. This motion, I'm sorry, this, oh yeah, well, we have to do the minutes. This will be before us again.
Not over, you still have minutes, so.
I know. So folks, our meeting isn't over yet. We still have other business. You don't have to attend for this, but we have other business. But just to let you know, so we're going to be meeting then June 11th we'll have the reorganization draft on our agenda again. We encourage all of you to take a look. We'll be posting additional materials, it sounds like, on the website. I did not bring water tonight, and I am regretting that extensively. So we'll see you again then June 11th. The additional information will be on the website, and we'll be discussing the revised draft at that time. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Okay, Planning Commission, the next agenda item we have, oh, thank you so much. The next order of business for us is review of minutes. So would somebody like to make a motion to recommend the meeting minutes of April 9th?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the meeting minutes from April 9th.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Angelo seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Okay, there being no further business then before us, can I make a motion, or will someone make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Kim seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. It is 10:10 p.m. Thank you.